In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Student Etiquette puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Today is Can We All Be Feminists? It's a collection of essays edited by Jane Eric Udori. This first chapter, or first essay, is from Charlotte Shane. It's called No Wave Feminism. If you feel like feminism is failing you, you're not alone. I sometimes have the impression that I'm as thoroughly feminist as I am thoroughly human. That feminism is as intrinsic to my contribution to my constitution as my skeleton is to my body. But in my 35 years, I've struggled with or outright rejected feminism on several occasions. First, as an ignorant adolescent, what do women need feminism for if they already got the vote? Then, as a sex worker who saw how regularly and even gleefully feminists stoked the public's long-standing antipathy toward professionally sexual women. And now again, as someone moving even further into the far left, who cannot abide the forms of feminism that embrace and are complicit with the worst aspects of liberalism. The more I learn about the intersecting oppressive forces that continue to shape the Western world, colonialism, patriarchy, capitalism, xenophobia, and racism, and the network of cruel social machinery to which these systems give rise, incarceration, crippling debt, disenfranchisement, deportation, and so on, the less sense it makes to use gender as the primary lens through which to regard human-engineered suffering. Feminism doesn't feel like the sharpest weapon to wield against white supremacy or border policing, for instance, or even the best tool with which to approach basic civic concerns like vibrant schools. That's not because those issues don't impact women. Obviously, they directly and indirectly impact many. But they don't necessarily impact women more or in dramatically different ways than they do men. In other words, the most significant challenges these issues present aren't tethered to one's sex. And so prioritizing gender above other aspects of identity limits one's realm of ethical responses. Here's an example. American prisons often keep female prisoners shackled while they give birth. There are variations on the theme. Some women are shackled during labor, some are unshackled, but then shackled again almost immediately afterward. And almost all are shackled while heavily pregnant. There's some variation of what shackling entails, too. It can mean being cuffed at the wrists or at the ankles, or both, or cuffed to a hospital bed or chained at the waist. Articulating these details makes the sadism even starker. A class-action federal lawsuit in 2017 alleged more than 40 women at the Milwaukee County Jail suffered this horror. It was preceded by lawsuits in 2014 and 2016 against that same jail for similar practice. But the appalling practice is hardly confined to one city or one state. In 2015, New York prisons were found to be shackling prisoners in labor in spite of a state law that made it illegal to do so. And according to a 2016 report by the Prison Birth Project and Prisoners Legal Services of Massachusetts, jails and prisons in Massachusetts were guilty of similar violations. Most feminists probably agree that this is a feminist issue. The topic accordingly receives coverage on feminist websites and sometimes in women's magazines. But does a feminist obligation to attend to the rights of the imprisoned extend only as far as pregnancy and labor? Or is it a feminist issue when a non-pregnant woman is shackled? Or when she is caged for years and exploited for her labor, denied face-to-face visits from loved ones, held captive in a compound in the name of, quote, justice? If the answer to these questions is yes, then it is also a feminist issue. Then is it also a feminist issue when men are shackled during various health emergencies, seizures, say? In 2014, a male inmate in Colorado died after undergoing several seizures while in restraints and receiving no medical treatment. Is it a feminist issue when incarcerated men are denied the right to visit with family or exploited for their labor? Is it a feminist issue when so many men are raped while in prison? Or does feminism's responsibility begin and end with gender-based mistreatment? The feminists hired by prominent media outlets often advocate for measures that would result in higher levels of incarceration. They write op-eds in favor of further criminalization around sex work and call for longer prison sentences for men convicted of assault, which we've known for decades is not necessarily synonymous with men who committed the crime. They also disturbingly relish the theater of sentencing, like that enacted by Judge Rosemary Aquilina, who told serial sexual abuser Larry Nassar that if she could, she would allow some or many people to do to him what he did to others. So sexual violation is an atrocity unless it happens to the right person. They capitalize on women's justified fear and anger around mistreatment by men to shore up the status quo, to suggest that our current problems are not the result of fundamentally unjust institutions, but rather institutions that are only incidentally sexist. That means that those same institutions could become less so with the right adjustments, like more draconian sentencing for crimes against or more female judges. But the prison system is racist and brutal by design, not by accident or mismanagement, just as the court system regularly fails the most vulnerable because it was built to protect the powerful. The challenge of the 21st century is not to demand equal opportunity to participate in the machinery of oppression, revolutionary thinker Angela Davis has written. Rather, it is to identify and dismantle those structures.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, it's the middle of the week. We got a lot to talk about today, a lot going on. One guest in the third hour of our program, Jojo from Jurors, is going to drop by. Moral cleansing American style, how the Supreme Court just outsourced cruelty, this bizarre decision. MAGA heads are exploding thanks to Mamdani's victory in New York City, the guy who's been barring a miracle for Curtis Sliwa or Eric Adams, going to be New York's next mayor. This is going to be interesting. And what kind of message does this send to Democrats? I'll get into that in a minute. Also, what happened with the Iran strikes? Trump is over in wherever he is, and I believe it's in, the Netherlands? The Hague, yeah. Ranting about how, screw the intelligence. They don't know what they're talking about. They didn't, yeah, right. Don't believe your lying eyes. Okay. And in the second hour of our program, a police state, Mike German, an ex-FBI agent, says that immigration agents hiding their identities, quote, highlights the illegitimacy of their actions. I've been saying this for some time. Also, people are going to die because of Medicaid cuts. Will Republicans get over it? Like McConnell says, Mitch McConnell says, they'll just get over it. Don't worry. 40,000 people will die as a result of these cuts, but that's all right. Or is it going to be a disaster for the GOP like Tom Tillis is freaked out about? We'll talk about that in the second hour of the program. Also, Trump's latest judicial nominee is a real piece of work. And in the third hour of the program, Jojo from Jurors, Trump got roasted online, so he launched a war, totally stable behavior, right? And the thought police strike again, this time a Norwegian. I'll tell you about that. So a lot to talk about. My op-ed today at HartmannReport.com, my daily take is titled Moral Cleansing, American Style, how the Supreme Court just outsourced cruelty. And, this is a Supreme Court decision that came down yesterday or the day before 6-3 ruling. As you can guess, the 6 Republican nominees versus the 3 Democratic nominees. And basically the Supreme Court greenlit the mass deportation of immigrants, not to their home countries, but to third countries, like South Sudan or El Salvador. Sonia Sotomayor, the Supreme Court Justice, Obama nominee, as I recall, in her dissent called this, by the way, it was a shadow docket ruling. There were no arguments made. There was no, basically, these shadow docket rulings are when the Republicans on the court just decide to give a gift to the Trump administration and they don't want to go through the trouble of actually explaining why. There is no formal decision. There is no explanation of their logic or their reasoning. There is no guidance to future courts. The shadow docket is completely out of control. They've been doing this like crazy for Trump during the 2 Trump administrations, and it's just wrong. But anyhow, but even though it was a shadow docket ruling, Justice Sotomayor said, I'm going to dissent. And she was joined by Elena Hagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson. And she wrote, "The government has made clear in word and deed that it feels itself unconstrained, free to deport anyone anywhere without notice or an opportunity to be heard." And she just goes off. She says the due process clause represents the principle that ours is a government of laws, not of men, and that we submit ourselves to rulers only if under rules. And then she says, by rewarding lawlessness, the court once again undermines this foundational principle. This is just crazy. And by the way, if sending people who in many cases have not committed a crime, being in the United States without documentation is not a crime. It's a civil offense. It's not a criminal offense. It's the difference between a parking ticket and a speeding ticket. A parking ticket is a civil offense. A speeding ticket can be a crime, or drunk driving or something. That can be a crime. Being in this country without documentation, illegally as it were, is not a crime. It is a civil offense. So, if this sounds familiar, it should. I mean, this was one of the most cold-blooded decisions that the Nazis made, was to move their death camps into Poland rather than have them in Germany. Now, clear, deportation is not genocide, although it may lead to death. But both decisions are grounded in the same logic of moral evasion through geographic displacement. And that's why I'm calling this moral cleansing. Right? This is not whitewashing, not greenwashing. It's just, let's call it moral cleansing. And when regimes want to commit acts that would normally stir the conscience or provoke a backlash, what do? They try to find ways to outsource it, outsource the cruelty. I mean, like I said, the Nazis did this. George W. Bush did this with extraordinary rendition, where we took people who we had captured in Iran and Afghanistan and transported them to third countries like Egypt, where they were vigorously tortured and in many cases killed, died while being tortured. And, it was criminal at every level, but George W. Bush never paid a price for that. And Donald Trump knows it. This kind of logic is the death of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Judge Patricia Millett, when she was looking at the deportation of these 200 Venezuelans to El Salvador, she said, Nazis got better treatment under the Alien Enemies Act. And they did. We kept Nazis here in prison camps where they were actually treated quite well. In fact, some of them became citizens afterwards. So, the Trump administration, of course, they were white people. The Trump administration basically is saying that migrants have no rights once we ship them out of the United States. All we have to do is put them on an airplane. And that's really chilling. I mean, this isn't just about safety. This is about displacement as punishment. It's the creation of a pseudo-legal infrastructure of indifference to the humanity of the people that were I mean, this is not how democracies behave. This is how authoritarian regimes insulate themselves from dissent. And like with all authoritarian regimes, once this starts, it's not going to stop. You know, A, we've got 3.5 more years of this, and B, God only knows what's going to follow. A future president with dictatorial ambitions could use this ruling to round up people like you and me and deport us. And once we are outside the country, we would have no ability to do anything under this ruling, under this logic. I mean, the whole genius of the American system is that we have checks on state power. The executive can't act like a king. The courts have to protect the vulnerable. The public has to have visibility into what's being done in our name. But now the Supreme Court has completely abdicated that role. You think this is paranoid? Well, so did the people in Berlin in 1932. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. This decision was not just about deportation. It's about moral laundering, washing the blood off our hands by putting it on somebody else's tarmac. The Nazis did it, the Bush administration did it, and now Trump's backers in the Supreme Court have opened the door one more time. You know, Mark Twain said history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. If we're not careful, we may soon find that rhyme turning into a tune that we heard back in the 1930s and didn't really much like. 14.5 minutes past the hour. I'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Occupying the media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week right here. I'll be right back with you. And welcome back. Dave in Venice, California. Hey, Dave, what's on your mind today? Dave, listening on KPFK?
Stop putting your feet down. I'm here.
Hey, Dave, what's up?
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Tom, what I called about today is C-SPAN is being defunded because cable companies are not paying their fees anymore. There's no more cable companies, so C-SPAN is not being funded, and it's threatening that they won't be able to function as they have. This is a perfect opportunity for the Democratic Party to grab C-SPAN and to pay for it. They don't have to do anything partisan. All they got to do is keep it going, because we need to keep an eye on the House of Representatives, the Congress, and the Senate. And this is really important. And they don't need to put any spin on it, but they could add other shows as they do. They have talk shows and they discuss the legislative matters that come before the people. Mm-hmm. This is what I'm calling about. This is a great opportunity, and I know I've heard you before say that the Democratic Party should have grabbed radio stations and things like that. Well, here, this is another opportunity, and I'm afraid it's just going to go, that C-SPAN may go away, and we're not going to be, the people are not going to be able to see what is actually happening in our legislative process. I'll get off the air, and I'd like to hear your commentary about that.
Let me dig into it a little bit. Brian Lamb did a long interview with me years ago, and I've been on C-SPAN a bunch of times. In fact, they were supposed to be sending somebody out here to our studio about 2 months ago, and then they canceled it. I'm not sure why. Maybe it has to do with this. Dave, I don't know enough to comment on it, but let me look into it. Thanks for putting that on my radar screen. I appreciate it. Alex in Long Beach, California. Hey, Alex, what's on your mind today?
Hi, just a quick, I have 2 points, one quick comment and one question. So I'm pretty sure you know, but maybe not everybody knows, that a lot of undocumented individuals work and pay taxes via IRS ITIN numbers or given Social Security. It establishes a good record for when they process their immigration application.
Pretty much exclusively the people who are here with permission, you're right, which is millions and millions of people,
Yes, and therefore, it really debunks the comment of social, social weight, social weight and financial weight.
These are lying about all that stuff, What was your question?
Yes. And my question is, Since the Supreme Court decided this in a shadow, shadow ruling or without hearing real arguments, is there a way to challenge that?
Geez, you'd have to file another lawsuit, and it would have to work its way back up to the Supreme Court. I mean, the other way to challenge anything the Supreme Court does is with the legislature. Congress can overrule the Supreme Court. It's in Article 2, Section 3, or Article 3, Section 2, excuse me. But I wouldn't expect that this Congress would overrule them. So, you know, those are the only two ways. You can either get the court to reconsider something, or you can go after them with Congress. Alex, great question. Thank you for the call. It's 19 minutes past the hour. I will be back with you in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. It's the shocking truth about hairdryer economics and climate change. Donald Trump recently came out with this just absolutely absurd statement. He said, they want everybody to have an electric car. We don't have enough electricity. We couldn't make enough electricity for that. Well, let's just look at the facts. Charging your electric car with the charger that typically comes with it, you plug it into a 110-volt outlet, pulls about 10 amps. That's about the same as a hairdryer. So if everybody in America just ran a hairdryer for a couple hours every night, or anytime during the day, do you think that that's going to bring down the power grid? No, this is absurd. It's also why it only costs, I mean, you know, running an electric car, powering an electric car is about the equivalent of $1 a gallon gasoline. I mean, obviously it depends on the car. But there's a whole great rant with all the details and charts and graphs and everything else. It's over at HartmannReport.com. It's called The Shocking Point About Hairdryer Economics and Climate Change. Check it out.
They wear their robes like armor. From the bench they cast their spell. 6 hands raised in silence, and they banished hope to hell. No crime, no judge, no jury, just a passport stamped in shame. Send them where the sun don't rise and no one knows their name. It's moral cleansing, American style, where cruelty gets buried under legal files. You don't need a gun when you got a plane, and due process dies without leaving a stain. Oh, it's clean on the surface, washed in denial. That's moral cleansing, American style. They say it's not our problem when the bodies hit the ground. In countries torn by fire, where justice can't be found, build your walls with paper, hide the razor in the smile. Export the suffering and pretend it's all worthwhile. It's moral cleansing, American style. Out of sight, out of court, out of mind by miles. You don't need a camp when you've got a map to erase the name and close the trap. Truth don't scream when it's in exile. That's moral cleansing, American style.
Welcome back.
The robes are black, the heart.
Yeah, it continues. Mamdani, the Democratic Socialist candidate, Zoran Mamdani, beat Brad Lander, beat Andrew Cuomo, and is going to face in the general election Eric Adams running as an independent, and the old guy Curtis Sliwa, the old Red Beret guy, whatever say that again? Oh, the Guardian Angels, yeah. Anyhow, he ran on. This is quite a platform. right? And he won overwhelmingly. I'll get to that in just a moment. But this was his platform. Freezing rent on rent-stabilized units, constructing over 200,000 affordable homes, expanding tenant protections, free bus fare citywide, a greater investment in the MTA, the subway system, funded in part, by the way, by congestion pricing, universal child care, publicly funded pre-K from infancy to age 5, redirecting tax breaks from elite universities to the City University of New York and the State University of New York, reducing the cost of living through municipal grocery stores, baby support programs, expanding access to mental health programs, a $30 minimum wage, $30 an hour minimum wage by 2030, within the next 5 years. And frankly, I think probably most states are going to get there anyway. I mean, we're at $16, I think, now here in Portland. He champions taxes and a surcharge on millionaires. I mean, that's a hell of a message, right? Basically, the message was go bold or go home, as Dino Bidala writes in his newsletter over on Substack today. Dean says, I couldn't open my mailbox or turn on my TV without seeing an ad funded by billionaires like Mike Stop and Frisk Bloomberg, anti-DEI activist billionaire Bill Ackman, and others who spent north of $25 million to smear Mamdani. Bill Clinton endorsed Andrew Cuomo. Richie Torres, Congressman Torres, endorsed Cuomo. Bloomberg coughed up money and endorsed Cuomo. But Cuomo lost. He lost. I'm telling you, this is a message to the so-called moderate Democrats. Get out of the way. America wants FDR again. It wants FDR and LBJ without the Vietnam War. We want the Great Society. We want the New Deal. Hell, I'd go with the Square Deal, Teddy Roosevelt's Square Deal. That was a national health care program and free education. I mean, So anyway, Mamdani and Lander, between the two of them, and Lander, by the way, ran on the same platform. In fact, they went on TV together and said that they were endorsing each other. Between the two of them, they got 55% of the vote. Cuomo got 36% of the vote. That, in my opinion, now I realize, New York City is New York City, but hey, New York City has elected Republicans as mayors recently. I mean, Rudy Giuliani. So if you want to know the future, how Democrats can win elections in the future, look at Zoran Mamdani. This is a big deal. Meanwhile, Trump is over in The Hague going, I really did kill those people. I really did blow up the he's just hysterical that this DNI report, the Office of National Intelligence, excuse me, DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency report, says that he didn't take out the nuclear program. He set it back a few weeks, maybe a few months. And apparently they had moved all the uranium out of there before now anyway, because, Trump was telegraphing this move for, weeks? So, and now it turns out that we discover that the whole thing was planned for years by Netanyahu, just waiting for an opportunity. And the opportunity was, he wanted an American president who would go along with his plan. This, more than anything else, this is Donald Trump being manipulated by Benjamin Netanyahu. He is such a sucker. In fact, now the NATO guys, are essentially manipulating him. I'll tell you my take on that after the break, and I'll pick up your calls. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's the place where despair is not an option. I'll be right back with more of the news of the day and your calls. From Settlers, the mythology of the white proletariat, the true story of the white nation by Jay Sakai, published by Morning Star Press in 1989. This is from Chapter 2, The Foundations of Settler Life. The life of European settlers and the class structure of their society was abnormal because it was dependent upon a foundation of conquest, genocide, and enslavement. The myth of the self-sufficient white settler family clearing the wilderness and supporting themselves through their own initiative and hard labor is a propaganda fabrication. It is the absolute characteristic of settler society to be parasitic, dependent upon the super-exploitation of oppressed peoples for its style of life. Never has Euro-American society completely supported itself. This is the decisive factor in the consciousness of all classes and strata of white society from 1600 to now. Settler society was raised up above the level of backward old Europe by a foundation of conquest. This conquest was a miracle drug for a Europe convulsed with the reaction of decaying feudalism and deadly capitalism. Shot into the veins of the Spanish feudal nation, for instance, the miracle drug of the West gave Spain the momentary power to overrun North Africa, Holland, and Italy before her historical incident waned. Like many such fixes for Euro-Americans, this conquest was addicting. It was habit-forming and rapidly indispensable, not only culturally, but in the mechanism of an oppressor society whose lifeblood was new conquest. We'll examine this later in the relationship of settlerism to imperialism. For now, it's enough to see that this conquest is a material act of great magnitude, an economic and social event as important as the emergence of the factory system or the exploitation of petroleum in the Middle East. We stress the obvious here because the Euro-American settlers have always made light of their invasion and occupation, although the conquered territory is the precondition for their whole society. Traditionally, European settler societies throw off the propaganda smoke screens that they didn't really conquer and dispossess other nations. They claim with false modesty that they merely moved into vacant territory. So the early English settlers depicted America as empty, a howling wilderness, unsettled, sparsely populated, just waiting with a vacant sign on the door for the first lucky civilization to walk in and claim it. Theodore Roosevelt wrote defensively in 1900, quote, "The settler and pioneer have at bottom had justice on their side. This great continent could not have been kept as nothing but a game preserve for squalid savages," end of quote. It is telling that this lie is precisely the same lie put forward by white Afrikaner settlers who claim that South Africa was literally totally uninhabited by any Africans when they arrived from Europe. To universal derision, these European settlers claim to be the only rightful historic inhabitants of South Africa. Or we can hear similar defenses put forward by the European settlers of Israel, who claim that much of the Palestinian land and buildings they occupy are rightfully theirs, since the Arabs had allegedly decided to voluntarily abandon it all during the 1948-49 war. Are these kinds of tales any less preposterous than those put forward by Euro-American settlers? America was spacious and sparsely populated only because the European invaders destroyed whole civilizations and killed off millions of Native Americans to get the profits they wanted. We all know that when the English arrived at Virginia, for example, they encountered an urban, village-dwelling society far more skilled than they were in the arts of medicine, agriculture, fishing, and government. This civilization was reflected in a chain of 300 Indian nations and peoples stretching from the Arctic Circle to the tip of South America, many of whom had highly developed societies. There was, in fact, a greater population in these Indian nations in 1492 than in all of Western Europe. Recent scholarly estimates indicate that at the time of Columbus, there were 100 million Indians in the hemisphere, 10 million in North America, 25 million in central Mexico, and an additional 65 million elsewhere in Central and South America. These numbers have long been concealed since they give rise to the logical question of what happened to this great mass of people. The European invaders, Spanish, Dutch, English, Portuguese, and French, simply killed off millions and millions to safeguard their conquest of the land and provide the disposable slave labor to launch their new world. Conservative Western historical estimates show that the Spanish reduced, in quotes, the Indian population of their colonies from some 50 million to only 4 million by the end of the 17th century. And from the 10 million Indians who once inhabited North America, after 4 centuries of settler invasion and rule, there were in 1900 perhaps 200 to 300 descendants in the United States. This was the very substantial down payment towards the continuing blood price that third world nations have to pay to sustain the Euro-American way of life. So when we hear that the settlers pushed out the Indians, or forced the Indians to leave their traditional hunting grounds. We know that these are just code phrases to refer politely to the most barbaric genocide imaginable. It could well be the greatest crime in all of human history. Only here, the Adolf Eichmanns and Heinrich Himmlers had names like Benjamin Franklin and Andrew Jackson. The point is that genocide was not an accident, not an excess, not the unintended side effect of virile European growth. Genocide was the necessary and deliberate act of the capitalists and their settler shock troops. The book Settlers. Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out.
In D.C. now LA's in flames, armored trucks rolling like it's a war game, flags in the frame, choppers in the sky, but the Constitution bleeding and the truth just died. They called it law and order, what they meant was fear, and the boots on your doorstep say the end is near. Send in the Marines, let the rifles gleam, make it look strength while you kill the dream. He don't want peace, he wants the scene, so roll the tanks and send in the Marines.
Welcome back, 35 minutes past the hour. This is wild. Mamdani won the election overwhelmingly in New York City, in the primary anyway. Presumably he'll win the general, but you never know. We thought Kamala Harris was going to be our president. But consider what happened. I mean, Greg Gutfeld on Fox News called him a social justice suicide bomber. And he said, if this guy gets even close to being elected, dude, you're going to see this go to hell. Sean Hannity said Mamdani was a, quote, anti-Israel radical who truly believes in globalizing the intifada. The New York Post, also openly bigoted in its opposition to Mamdani, whined that he supports providing funds for gender-affirming care for transgender people. Oh, my God, oh, my God. And even the New York Times said, we do not believe that Mr. Mamdani deserves a spot on New Yorkers' ballots. Right. The New York Post, Rupert Murdoch's newspaper, said, vote against the menace that is Zohran Mamdani. Yeah. So I didn't realize they were that ferocious. That's pretty amazing. I mentioned NATO, and then I'll pick up your calls. Watching the coverage this morning from The Hague, the head of NATO, forgive me, his name is escaping me, or her name. I'm pretty sure it's a him these days. But anyway, that person had reached out to Donald Trump and said, thank you so much. You've done such a great job. You've got all these nations saying that they'll do 5% of their defense spending. Spain is backing away from this. But this has been Trump's thing for a long, long time. And so it looks to me like they decided that, it's better to have Trump on your side than you. And even if he's a fool and an ass and a neo-fascist, we can get more done if we can get him on our side than if we just piss him off or humiliate him. And so they were all sucking up to him, and they were all being nice to him. And I don't mean that in the kind of obsequious, pathetic way that Republicans suck up to Trump, or right-wing media does, but somewhere on that spectrum. And pointing to real successes that he's had. And so this morning he was all full of himself and preening and, oh yeah, they love me and and everything's going to be good. I think it might be working. And of course, the real reason why all these nations are suddenly real interested in hitting 5% of defense spending for NATO is because they need to do that in order to support Ukraine, which Trump may not realize, but You know, and he was asked about Ukraine this morning by one of the reporters, and he kind of gave one of his famous non-answers. But the reporter who asked the question was a young woman whose husband is fighting in Ukraine. She's a Ukrainian. And he seemed, you know, it's the old thing, you know, whoever talks to Donald Trump, you know, has the most impact for at least a short period of time. He seemed to soften. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But what say you? What's on your mind today? Roger in Seattle. Hey, Roger, what's up?
Well, I'm wanting to see if, analogous to the comedians in the world, you could be a counterpart to Stephen Colbert and maybe Bill Burr that do the crude humor, and you could do the non-crude humor, and maybe set up a contest that you could announce the winner on each of the 5 days, at least your broadcast on KBCS and the other radio stations. So the contest would be, what type of clean humor could we develop to ridicule Trump? So like MAGA monkeys or people of the lie or rooters of evil, so it, you know, brings up images.
I'd rather, you know, I don't have a problem ridiculing
saying,
Trump, but Roger, I'm real reluctant to ridicule the people who support Trump. I think I view them as victims, not as bad people.
Bad people, but I think their future is in doubt. I think I've mentioned before that they're like the Whig Party. If they don't straighten out and come back to the center, they're goners.
Yeah, I think that may be true, although, you know, there'll probably be a period of time here. It may take a little while, but yeah. Roger, thank you for the call. Billy in Wimberley, Texas. Hey, Billy, as a Trump supporter, what do you think of that?
Well, I'm all I got to say is don't mess with the Zohan.
Okay.
You know,
yeah.
I hope that guy wins the Democratic nomination, because to see Curtis Sweet just mop the floor with him is going to be a real treat.
Well, how do you think that's going to happen? I mean, what's wrong with, you know, free bus fare and you know, building 200,000 low-income units and making life more affordable in New York? He campaigned exclusively on economic issues.
I'll tell you exactly how it's going to happen. That guy is so radical.
For example,
and if wanted to take over the grocery stores and.
Oh no, he didn't want to take over any grocery stores. He just wants to open a couple of kind of basically co-ops, city-run grocery stores that can give them some competition, so the big chains will have to lower their prices.
However, Tom, let me finish, please.
Sure.
He's so radical that Curtis Sweet will wipe the floor with him, and it'll just be another step in what happened with MAGA. You know, y'all could keep going further to the left and so insanely to the left that it's even the people that are in the middle are going to say, well, now we can't roll with this anymore.
So, and Billy, if you've got parts, a question here, a serious question. If you've got parts of the city that are essentially food deserts, you know, where there's not the only kind of food that's available is 7-Eleven kind of, you know, the fast food or highly processed food that causes obesity. What's wrong with the city opening some stores so that people fresh fruit and vegetables? What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with them opening a store if they can compete. But if they're going to be paid for with the tax dollars, then no.
Well, we don't know. I mean, you know, the tax dollars might be used to open the store, but he's not talking about socializing anything, to the best of my knowledge.
I think that's exactly what he's talking about doing.
Well, okay. You could argue that opening a store, having the government own a store, is a form of socialism. But again, I don't see what's wrong with it.
You know, having a co-op is fine. We've got co-ops in Austin, Texas.
Sure.
And
we do here
you know,
I'm
fine with them, but they don't compete. They're much more expensive than a regular H-E-B or Randall store or Walmart or whatever people may go for their groceries.
Right, but these are people who don't have access to those kind of stores. They live in a city where most people don't own a car, and you can't walk to anything except, you know, to buy heavily processed food that like I said, causes obesity and cancer and diabetes.
Well, we can ban our government-run healthcare, government-run grocery stores all day long, but they never work. And if a full-blown communist like this guy gets to be the nominee, Curtis Sweet will mop the floor with him. There's no question about it.
Well,
and it'll be fun to watch.
It will be fun to watch. Yeah, I know Curtis. He's a colleague of mine. I'm not sure if he's still doing his radio show, but I've met him a few times at the Talkers conventions, and I don't know him well, but I've met him, and he's about my age. I mean, he's kind of an old guy. But he certainly knows how to debate. So it'll be.
What's wrong with him? What's wrong with him, Tom?
Curtis Lewa? I don't know. I really don't. I haven't paid that much attention to New York politics for years, Billy. So I don't know what his positions are or what his platform is. So I can't.
I'm far away from it too, but even I will be able to see the glow of New York City burning down if this communist gets elected.
Okay, Billy, we'll see. Right? We'll see. We'll find out in November.
Take care.
Yeah. Thank you, Billy. Good talking to you. It's 44.5 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. Talk media for the sane among us. Yeah, we're still here, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Helping you win the water cooler wars. I'll be right back. Stay with us. And welcome back. Angela in New York City. Hey, Angela, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I actually called about something that happened yesterday, but I just wanted to respond to the last caller. Mm-hmm. First of all, I doubt very much he lives in New York City, because if he did, he wouldn't be speaking the way he is. The reason everyone is so upset is because New York City is the biggest example of the wealth disparity that has happened in the past 40 years. It is impossible to live here if you are not wealthy. And the people that are most afraid today are basically the people who are in the business community and people who have businesses and people who are wealthy. They are terrified of Mamdani. And they're spreading all of these lies. But you know what? I just wanted to say he needs to be quiet because he doesn't live here. That's one thing. The second thing is I wanted you to be aware of this, because this happened to us yesterday. And it happened to a lot of people around the city, a lot of young people. I went to vote. I went with my daughters. They were 20 years old, both registered. I'm registered. They voted in the presidential election. I was allowed to vote. They were told that they were not registered and they were barred from voting.
Really?
Even after they showed proof on their phones of their registration, they were turned away.
Wow.
I argued, and they were just crushed because this meant a lot to them. We came back home and they went online. Apparently, a lot of their friends were having the same issue. We contacted the Mamdani campaign, and they said that we should ask for affidavits, which we did. We went back, asked for affidavits, and they were given affidavits in Chinese and Spanish, and they were not given any in English. And when I protested that, they basically threw us out of there. So I want you to be aware of this. I want everyone to be aware of this. And anyone who speaks about New York City needs to be quiet unless you live here.
Was this a polling place in a heavily Republican area? I mean, do you think that this was just...
No, not at all. This is a polling place in a heavily Democratic area. This is what is worrying.
Strange.
Okay? This is not this is not the Upper East Side. This is not the Upper West Side. This is a heavily Democratic area in Manhattan. Okay? And... You know,
who's your congressperson?
My congressperson, offhand, I can't think of his name.
Look it up, yeah.
But I wouldn't.
That's who you should reach out
to. No, I know, but I wouldn't trust him anyway, because after what I saw yesterday, I did not expect that at all. My daughters were crushed. I was upset. Right. I'm glad that he won, but I'm really nervous because the feeling here in New York is a threat. And of course he's a threat. He's a threat to the status quo.
Right.
All we have here are luxury condos. People are unable to live here. People aren't able to do anything. We can't survive here unless you're making, a couple $1 million a year, and even that's not enough.
Yeah.
So anyone who doesn't live here needs to stop talking about New York City. I'm sick and tired of it. I've been living here for 20 years. I've raised children here, and, it was a lot easier back then, and, I'm beside myself with anger about this. So I want everyone to know this happened in a heavily Democratic district in Manhattan in New York City.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very much not good news. And this is why we need to pass a law that says that voting is a right, not a privilege, so that before they can take the vote away from them.
We need to have people at polls who are going to actually monitor this, yes, because yesterday we had no recourse.
Did you try calling I think it's 1-800-OUR-VOTE? Did you try calling
We did everything. We did everything.
Well,
and,
if you learn anything more about how this happened, Angela, if this was something that Mayor Adams did or, whatever.
We don't know.
If it came from New
I'll
York
let you know if we find out anything.
Yeah,
I'll let you know if we find out anything.
Please do.
Yeah.
Thanks, Angela.
Thanks.
Good talking to you. Bye-bye. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Welcome back. 49 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Greg in Fleming, Kentucky. Hey, Greg, what's on your mind today?
Yes, sir. How are you today?
I am great, but I'll get better, Greg. How about you?
Well, I don't know about it. Gratified you had a caller from New York to rebut the gentleman from Texas, if I can use that word for such a person.
Well, it's funny he went off on a rant about communists when the communists, I don't know of any country that's still communist. I mean, there are no communists left.
It's just the language that they choose to use. You say, what's wrong with the government using tax dollars to perhaps do something as a benefit to the people? Well, he goes straight to communism, and they're going to burn the city down if this guy's elected.
Yeah.
And see what, I don't know anything about his positions, this democratic socialist. As you say, I think this is a big arrow for the Democrats.
I agree.
To go, because
my take on it, Greg, is that Democrats have wanted Bernie Sanders since 2008. We wanted Bernie Sanders in that election. We wanted Bernie Sanders in 2016. We wanted Bernie Sanders in 2020. And the Democratic Party, or at least the billionaire faction within the Democratic Party and the corporate faction, the Josh Gottheimers and Jared Goldens of the Democratic Party.
Could you say the Clinton faction?
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't call them fascists, but yeah, the Clinton machine prevented Bernie. Yeah, absolutely. And Bill Clinton endorsed Andrew Cuomo in this election in New York.
Exactly. Of course he would. He's the mainstream Democrat, whereas the majority of the party, as you say, is to the left of where everybody thinks it is.
Right, which means that Bill Clinton is no longer mainstream.
Exactly. Not at all. He's part of the old guard.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's what AOC and all the rest of them are fighting against, that mindset of, we're still in a debate society.
Yeah.
These people are out for blood.
Yeah, there you go. No, Democrats want to go back to the New Deal and the Great Society. We want an activist government, and we want activist politicians.
It just depends on how you think what government is for.
Exactly. Greg, I got to move along, but thank you. Very, very well said. Thank you. Hack in Yamasee, South Carolina. Am I saying that right, Hack?
I suppose. I'm not actually from there, but anyway, it's been a long time since we've talked. It's good to hear you.
Thank you.
You are absolutely my spirit animal.
Well, thank you.
Whenever I heard the caller talking about communism, immediately a parody children's book popped into my head. It said, and the title of the children's book was "Everything I Don't Understand Is Communism."
I love it.
But anyway,
Joe
Republicans basically, and I'm surprised Republicans basically, and I'm really surprised that nobody has said this. I think I'm the first person to say this. Quite simply, they want to replace the New Deal with the Raw Deal.
Yeah. Well said.
But anywho, the reason that I called was the shadow docket decision regarding deportation.
Yeah.
I don't think it's deportation. It's sounding a lot, that shadow docket made it sound a lot more like rendition.
I agree. Kidnapping and rendition, yes.
But anyway, yeah, so now, Trump can not only deport willy-nilly, he can render willy-nilly.
I believe you're right. I mean, I don't know how else you would describe sending somebody to a concentration camp where there is no due process, there's no opportunity to talk to a lawyer. Which is what happened in El Salvador. This is not a prison; it's a concentration camp, and that's where they're going. Hack, excellent point. Thank you so much for calling and making.
In summary, in summary, we are fulfilling the ancient Chinese curse of living in interesting times.
Yeah, very well said. Hack, thank you. Brad in Prattville, Alabama. Hey, Brad, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, I just wanted to share some quick updates on some stuff going on here in the central Alabama area. I've called in before and mentioned Read Freely, Alabama. It's an organization that was started a few years ago by a group of women here in Prattville to combat some of the censorship rules that were being put in place by groups like Moms for Liberty and Clean Up Alabama. They have been doing a tremendous amount of work, and it has actually spread completely statewide now. There are chapters all over from Mobile to Huntsville.
It's called Read Freely, R-E-A-D, Freely?
ReadFreelyAlabama.org is their website. Cool. And like I said, it's growing by leaps and bounds, and they're even, it's bringing a lot of attention to what's going on in our libraries. Also, I wanted to mention that a few months ago, a group of activists in from Montgomery, Selma, all over this area, started a River Region DSA chapter, and I believe it's the third one in the state of Alabama.
Democratic Socialists of America?
Correct. And their website is theriverregiondsa.org.
Very cool.
And they are they've already started doing street solidarity movements. They are working on getting candidates elected. We have some good news from Prattville also. Autauga County was the 66th out of 67th counties to start a Autauga County Democratic Party. And we met for the first time basically last week, formed it. And right after we did that, Blount County started in Alabama, a Blount County Democratic Party. So now all 67 counties in Alabama have a Democratic Party. And some of the groups, they're going in and really trying to get more people. We're seeing, people are getting tired of what's going on. A lot of people around here that even voted for Trump, we've been hearing them lately making a lot of complaints. Well, I don't really like the way he did the military during the parade. They didn't like the fact that their Social Security benefits are being cut. People cannot get on disability right now because it's being frozen. People who have been receiving government assistance for so long are now not able to get those services, and they're waking up. Yeah. And we're really there's so many great things going on here. We just had our second Pride event for Prattville, and that was a huge struggle. The first year they had the picnic, not the Proud Boys, but the other one, Patriot Front, came and wearing masks and tried to intimidate everybody. And then the next year, I think they had over 1,000.
Wow.
So
yeah.
it's
America's waking up, Brad.
Yeah.
Brad, thanks a lot for the call. What great news. Thank you so much for that update. It is, it's the top of the hour here. I'll be back with you on the other side of the break. A police state coming. And also, people are going to die because of these Medicaid cuts. Will we get over it, like McConnell says?
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every source on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Cabinet, George Washington and the Creation of an American Institution by Leslie M. Chervinsky. This is from the introduction. At 11:30 in the morning on August 22nd, 1789, a large cream-colored coach pulled up to the front door of Federal Hall, 6 Wall Street in New York City. 6 matching, perfectly groomed horses pulled the elegant carriage with sparkling gold trim. The coachman, outfitted in crisp white and red trimmed livery, jumped down from the back of the carriage and opened the door. An elegantly dressed man with powdered hair stepped down with a portfolio of papers under his arm. He towered over his companion, Henry Knox, the acting Secretary of War, and his slaves attending to the horses. His ornate coach and his imposing presence drew curious stares from strangers passing by on the street. He walked up to the front door of Federal Hall and was immediately announced. George Washington, the first president of the United States, had arrived for his first visit to the United States Senate. This was no ordinary meeting. 2 years earlier, the delegates at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia had agreed that the Senate would advise and consent on treaties and other questions of foreign policy. But in practice, how the president and the Senate would interact remained for the first office holders to work out. Washington's relationship with the Senate was just one of countless governing details that he had to establish as the first president. Establishing precedent for every presidential action consumed his thoughts in the first few years of his administration. Not only would the American public and international audience judge his every action, but his successors would be guided by his choices. The stakes could not have been higher. The future of the republic rested on Washington making the right decisions. He approached every new situation with caution and took action only after consulting with his advisors. His first visit to the Senate was no different. The tense relationship between Native American nations and the United States posed an immediate challenge after Washington's inauguration on April 30th, 1789. Most Native American nations had sided with the British during the Revolutionary War, recognizing the threat that American settlers posed to native lands. On November 15th, 1789, representatives from the national government, North and South Carolina, the Creeks, and the Cherokees planned to meet to discuss the controversial treaties signed between 1783 and 1789 and to negotiate a new treaty. Washington had to select the representatives to send on behalf of the federal government, another important first for the president. At his August 22nd meeting, Washington planned to seek advice about what instructions he should give to the commissioners. Because he considered Native American relations to fall under the heading of foreign policy, he followed the constitutional guidelines for him with the Senate. On May 25, 1789, less than a month after his inauguration, Washington sent to the Senate all of the United States' previous treaties with the Indian nations, along with a number of supporting documents. After a brief discussion, honed its consideration of these papers. At the beginning of August, the Senate created a committee to meet with Washington. That committee planned the minute details of the upcoming meeting, down to where Washington would sit and how he would enter the chamber. On August 20 and 21, Washington nominated commissioners to negotiate with the Southern Indians. On August 21st, he sent an official note to the Senate announcing his visit the next day to discuss the terms of the proposed treaty. When Washington and Knox arrived at Federal Hall at 11:30 a.m., the doorkeeper announced their arrival. Washington sat at the front of the chamber, and Knox took the chair to the right. Washington handed his remarks to Knox, who in turn handed them to Vice President John Adams. Adams read the statement, but as Senator William McClay from Pennsylvania recalled, the senator, quote, could not master one sentence of it, end quote. Adams was not known for his public speaking skills, but the senator's struggles weren't entirely his fault. The Senate gathered for their work in the large chamber that occupied the first floor of Federal Hall. Because of the August heat in New York City, the doorkeeper had opened the windows in search of a cooling breeze. But along with fresh air, noise, Wall Street's pedestrians, carriages, peddlers, and horses flowed into the Senate chamber. The clamor overpowered Adams' voice, so few senators could make out the words that Washington had so carefully crafted. After a few complaints, Adams repeated the speech from the beginning. Washington's remarks offered a brief synopsis of the current diplomatic state between the United States and the Southern Indians and posed 7 questions for the Senate to answer with an aye or a no. Adams finished his recitation and sat. The seconds ticked by as the senators remained in awkward silence. A few shuffled papers or cleared their throats. McClay speculated in his diary that his colleagues were so intimidated by Washington's presence in the Senate chamber that they cowered in shameful silence. Eager to show that they could be active participants in the creation of foreign policy, McClay stood up and suggested referring the Washington's 7 questions to committee for discussion in detail. Washington then lost his temper, stood out at, "This defeats every purpose of my coming here." The senators fell into a stunned hush before Washington acquiesced to McClay's suggestion and offered to return to the Senate a few days later. Although he did not return to the following Monday, his first visit to the Senate was an inauspicious the executive legislative relationship. The book is The Cabinet by Leslie M. Chervinsky.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the second hour of our program, the alarming rise of U.S. police officers hiding behind. This is very strange. I've lived in this country a lot of years, and I don't recall cops ever wearing masks. I mean, it's just, it's certainly not Andy Mayberry, but it's also not, Chicago PD. It's not, Criminal Minds or FBI or, pick your TV cop show. It's just, you see that kind of thing in police states. I mean, the whole American democracy is that our government works for us, not the other way around. That people who are government employees are called public servants because their job is to serve the public. Serve and protect is the slogan of many police, or in part the slogan of many police departments around the country. And that requires a certain level of transparency. It requires a certain level of accountability. A government that's not accountable to its people is not a legitimate government. A government that hides its identity is not a legitimate government. A government whose agents, particularly whose agents are empowered with the right and power to deprive you of your liberty or take your life, or inflict considerable physical violence on you under color of law, those agents, it must be accountable. You've got the example, you've got these ICE guys who beat the crap out of this father of 3 young Marines a couple of days ago. We have no idea who they are. He has no idea who they are. There's no name badges. There's no insignia. There's no officer number. This is not how democracies work. I lived in Germany for a year. I interacted with the German police. I got stopped once. They don't wear masks. Name a country, please. Any democracy in the world where the police wear masks. It just doesn't happen. Mike German is a former FBI agent, and he's speaking out about this. He says, masking symbolizes the drift of law enforcement away from democratic controls. And I would argue that's exactly what it's all about. Hitler had basically 2 kinds of forces. He had the SS, which was, and their name translates into protection detail. They were his Praetorian Guard, the people who were just supposed to initially protect him. And of course, they ended up running the death camps and things like that. And then he had the SA, the brown, which was originally the brown shirts, our version of the Proud Boys, or their version of our Proud Boys. And it seems to me that what we're seeing now, and in both cases, they were not accountable to the law, they were not accountable to the government, they were accountable to Hitler himself. And it seems to me increasingly that we are moving in the direction of this kind of police state where the police don't have loyalty to the law, they don't have loyalty to law and order even. I mean, this is considerable disorder when you just start beating the crap out of people because they ran away from you. This is how police states evolve. I mean, DHS insists that they've got to protect their officers' privacy, but they haven't provided any evidence for this. They say, the number 2 guy at DHS said assaults are up over 400%. Actually, assaults against Customs and Border Protection officers are down over 20% year to date over last year to date. And what does this do? This is eroding trust in law enforcement agencies in the United States. When they see cops wearing masks and refusing and concealing their identity, refusing to identify themselves, they start wondering, are these people legitimate? Or they start thinking, these people must not be legitimate. And then it goes a step beyond that. We already have multiple cases now. We know of at least a half a dozen cases where vigilantes or criminals are pretending to be ICE officers and using that pretense, in one case to rape a woman, in one case to rob a couple, in one case to invade a home. I mean, these people, I mean, it's like giving a license, not giving a license, it's like giving cover to criminals. You want to commit a crime in the United States? Just pretend you're an ICE officer. Nobody will know. So, as you might have guessed, I'm not a fan of anybody wearing masks in this country to conceal their identity. Anybody who's a public servant, anybody who works for we the people. Meanwhile, Republicans are freaking out in the United States Senate. Thom Tillis is leading the freak out. Thom Tillis is the Republican senator from North or South Carolina, one of the Carolinas, and North Carolina. Thank you. And one of the, I will give him credit. He's smart enough to spell his name right, but Thom. But he's flipped out. And here's what he's flipped out about. He knows that in his state there's 813. Well, that's in Arkansas. He knows that there are hundreds of thousands of people in South Carolina, or what did you say, North Carolina, Thom Tillis? North, yeah, in North Carolina, who are going to get thrown off their health care. Now, the Republicans think they think they got this figured out. They're going to get real slick about it. The work requirements and additional paperwork requirements that are going to probably cause about 10 to 15 million people to lose their Medicaid benefits. don't kick in until December of 2026. Now, what happened in the month before December of 2026? That would be November of 2026. Oh, that would be the midterm elections. So they don't want these things to kick in until after the elections next year so that, you know, people won't realize how badly they were screwed by Republicans in the House and Senate. But Thom Tillis says, you know, that ain't going to fool them this time. This got more publicity than we expected. Researchers at the Yale Public School of Health have looked at this, at these cuts in Medicaid, and they have estimated every year that these cuts are in place, every single year, 42,500 Americans will die unnecessarily for lack of access to health care. 42,500 dead Americans. Many of them will be dead in North Carolina. And you would think that Thom Tillis would be a little concerned about that. Part of the story, there's a story about this in The Guardian by Michael Cianato, and he's talking about this person, Kelly Fountain, who lives in central Arkansas, who's moving out of state because they're tightening up on the Medicaid requirements. He notes about 813,000 children and adults in Arkansas are currently enrolled in Medicaid. That's over a quarter of all the people in the state. 64% of adults on Medicaid in Arkansas are working. Older women comprise 15.8% of the non-working population who have been deemed, able-bodied, but nobody's hiring people over 50 or 60, generally speaking. I mean, outside of Walmart greeters, and there's only a small, limited number of jobs there. He says most who are not working because they can't find a job, or they're disabled, or they have kids, or they're elderly. So get ready. Get ready, Republicans. Mitch McConnell was asked about this by the Republicans in a private meeting. And he said, I know a lot of us are hearing from people back home about Medicaid, but they'll get over it. Yeah, Thom Tillis is saying, nope. He says, this will be our version of Obamacare. And what he's talking about is in 2014, Obamacare got passed in 2014, and in November 2014, Democrats lost the House. They might have lost the Senate, too, I don't recall. But they definitely lost the House. Why? Because of Obamacare, because of all that propaganda that, you can have your doctor. No, you can't have your doctor. Tillis has had a chart showing that North Carolina would lose $38.9 billion in funding, and more than 600,000 North Carolinians are at risk of losing Medicaid coverage. He said this could cost us majority in both houses of Congress. He noted that he got his seat in 2014 by running against Kay Hagan, a Democrat, by criticizing Obamacare, saying that they took away your right to have a doctor, to choose your doctor. Remember all those attacks on Obamacare? Yeah. So now Senate Republicans are talking about setting up a $100 billion fund, paid for with borrowed money, of course. They're not going to raise taxes on billionaires, that could go to rural hospitals and nursing homes and community health centers so they don't shut down because of this. Right. Chuck Schumer's all over this. He's listing how many hospitals are going to close in which states. I mean, this is a story that has legs. This is a decision that is going to cause some serious damage. So what's on your mind? I'll pick up your calls on the other side of the break. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, defending America from the weapons of mass deception. Stick around. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's your media support group for We the People. Be right back with you. welcome back. Sean in Britain, South Dakota. Hey, Sean, what's on your mind today?
Hi, I want to comment on your caller that went on his rant about the grocery stores.
Billy, yeah.
I hope he's listening, because there are a couple of things he needs to consider. This is not tax dollars being wasted to support people. It's a preventative measure. What he's not thinking about is what people who have a poor diet actually cost this country. Obesity causes diabetes.
And heart disease. And cancer.
And heart disease and cancer. And I don't think a lot of people understand, but we have more Americans now in renal failure, in large part due to high fructose corn syrup. And dialysis is incredibly expensive. Then there's the costs of ambulance calls, emergency room visits. And when very poor people die, they can't afford to pay for a funeral. The government picks up that tab. There are a lot of reasons we need grocery stores in food deserts.
So it's a public health issue.
It is a public health issue. It's also an economic issue. All that stuff costs the taxpayers' dollars. We save way more money when we make sure that people are fed a healthy diet. And then there's the mental health aspect. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence and some good scientific evidence that these really poor diets contribute to health disorders.
Yes.
So it's just really short-sighted to think only about the immediate dollars spent to invest in a community and make sure that there are grocery stores where people can have appropriate food just to live.
Yeah. Excellent. Very well said, Sean, and I completely agree, and thank you for bringing that up. I should have thought of that when I was talking to Billy. I appreciate it. Thank you. Johnny in New York City. Hey, Johnny, what's up?
Hello, Tom. It's a pleasure to speak with you and the audience. My first time. I'm Johnny from East Harlem, born and raised in New York. I voted for Saran Madani. And to the Billies of the world, because it doesn't matter where they're from, they're in our neighborhoods and they're all over the place. They're not interested in the facts. So Madani spoke about food desert locations. No business there. So it wasn't going to compete with anything. The desert.
Right, other than the local kind of 7-Eleven store or the liquor store.
Or not at all, not much at all. Yeah, you got to go some distance. It's just not within walking distance and so on. In New York City, we're walkers, to say the least. The other issue is freeze the rent. Rent has been going up. This is very important to working class people, to poor people, and so this is the right point. I live in a rent stabilized unit. We are 800,000 to 1 million units in New York City. So we want this rent freeze, and he, as mayor, can control that. Free buses is the other issue. The state of New York commissioned a study on free buses, actually did it, and it worked. Very little problem.
Yeah.
And Madani's talking about unity. He did that in his campaign with his own rivals. They came together. And
You're
the
right.
Billies of the world just want to instill fear in all of us.
Yeah.
And
Johnny, I'm sorry, I'm out of time, but I got it. Very well said. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and I look forward to future conversations. It's 21 and a half minutes past the hour. Our daily song is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out. You know, between 40 years of Ronald Reagan's neoliberalism destroying the American middle class and all the just horrors of January 6th and the Trump presidency, America's waking up, and that's a really good thing. There's actually, some books coming out about this. Mine, The Hidden History of Democracy. Neil Howe's The Fourth Turning is here. And it looks like a moment of American renaissance is upon us, if our media doesn't screw it up, which raises the question, Can we have democracy and Fox News? Can the two coexist? Like, when Fox News runs chyrons saying that essentially Joe Biden is a wannabe dictator who's throwing Trump in jail because he's his political opponent. There's a whole rant about this and an in-depth analysis of what can we do with regard to repairing our media here in the United States over at HartmannReport.com. I think you'll find it interesting. Check it out. 3 minutes past the hour, picking up your calls here. John in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Hey, John, what's up?
Hey, Tom. There was a book out when you talk about these, the areas that he's talking about wanting to put these stores. Some years ago, I don't know if you ever read the book, it dealt with sacrifice zones across the United States.
Yeah, I recall, and I think we probably had the author on because I remember it quite vividly. I can't remember the title or the author either, but that was, what, 5-6 years ago?
It was a great book. I've talked to people about it, like Camden, New Jersey, when GM left.
Yeah.
They dealt with some of the Everglades, the sugarcane fields and the mining and the Appalachians. Mm-hmm. And people just don't realize that there's these blank spots where people are suffering. And when there's billions going to the petroleum companies and the banks, and, it doesn't even take that much money to take care of these people.
Right.
And everybody like this Texas clown raises hell. And one thing when he was talking to you that really irked me was, let me finish, Tom. They never let you finish.
Yeah.
When I know. I mean, it's unbelievable. I'm just hoping coming up that, I talked to a judge who was big in the Democratic Party in Michigan, and I said, how come it's always a flip-flop with Republicans and Democrats as far as the governor's concerned? And he stated, when there's energetic voting in the Flint corridor, the Democrat wins. When there's voter indifference in the Flint corridor, the Republican wins.
Oh, that's interesting.
And
that makes sense.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just hoping that, we got this Jocelyn Benson coming up, and I'm just hoping that they're energized in those areas.
Yeah.
So we don't have a Republican come back in. It's just like Schneider.
Have you guys had your primary yet?
What's that now?
Have you guys had your primaries in Michigan yet?
No, we haven't. Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay.
So, and I guess Jocelyn Benson has a new book out. Maybe you might want to have her on to talk about that.
She was on the show last week.
That's right, she was. I thought it was a different show.
Yeah.
That's right, she was. Yeah. And that's just my 2 cents. I appreciate you always taking my calls, and thanks, Tom. Have a great day.
Thanks, John. Good talking to you. Heather in Cleveland. Hey, Heather. Last minute's yours in this half hour. What's up?
Oh, good afternoon. I'm calling again to respond to Billy in Texas, and there is a really big difference between socialism and communism.
Mm-hmm.
Democratic socialism works to help the people. Communism is government saying you can have one loaf of bread. Democratic socialism is let's fund something where everybody can have a loaf of bread, not just one person. Or, you can't just have one person or one loaf of bread per family. You will have the opportunity to be able to go, especially the many people now who rely on food banks and things like that.
I would argue that we've had democratic socialism since the 1930s. Social Security is democratic socialism. Medicare is democratic socialism. And these are good things. I'm with you, Heather. Heather, thank you so much. You said it so well. Appreciate the call. It's 27 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Speaking the truth, right-wingers would really rather you didn't know all about. I'll be right back with you. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is by John Pavlovitz. It's titled, If God is Love, Don't Be a Jerk, Finding a Faith That Makes Us Better Humans. This is from the introduction titled, You Had One Job. If you want a good laugh, Google the phrase, you had one job. The results are hilariously tragic parade of seemingly impossible fails, unfathomably poor planning, and face-palming inducing human error. A piece of melted cheese on top of a fast food burger bun. The word stop misspelled on a street crossing. A keep to the right sign with its arrow facing left. A toilet lid inexplicably installed below the seat itself. It's strange stuff. Seeing these stupefying train wrecks and task execution tends to elicit two responses, usually making you feel a little bit better about yourself while simultaneously wanting to track down the culprits in an effort to understand how they managed to neglect the primary duty assigned to them. We begin to speculate. Were they temporarily distracted? Did they not properly comprehend the instructions? Did they feel as though someone above them in the chain of command dropped the ball? Were they just plain lazy? When people miss the point so spectacularly, we want to know how and why, because that kind of failure feels impossible from the outside. It seems unfathomable to get the main thing wrong, and seeing it happen sparks our curiosity. I imagine Jesus knows well the curiosity that comes with watching people give clear direction lose their way. As a longtime Christian by aspiration, if not always in practice, I often envision an exasperated Jesus coming back and the first words out of his mouth to his followers as his feet hit the pavement being, "You had one job, love. So what happened?" I wonder what massive wave of excuses and rationalizations would come flooding from the mouths of the faithful multitude in front of him, how they might justify their mistreatment of the assailed humanity in their care, the verbal and theological gymnastics they'd attempt to avoid culpability for their own cruelty. Would they stridently recite him a verse from Leviticus? Would they blame the liberal media for morally corrupting America? Would they talk about people's wicked lifestyle choices? Would they argue that they were loving the sinners in their midst, but simply hating their sin? Would they frantically offer up the same platitudes and parrot back the same partisan talking points that they've gotten used to brandishing on social media and proffering in Sunday school classes? And if all else failed to convince him, would they quote Jesus to himself in a desperate Hail Mary effort to pass the buck to him for what they did or failed to do while supposedly standing up for him? And there, fully seen in the piercing gaze of the namesake of their very faith tradition, with all their justifications and excuses exhausted and only their fully exposed hearts left, would any of their responses be sufficient reasons for refusing to love? When that was the singular task and primary commandment that he left them responsible for tending to? In my less compassionate moments, I admit that I like to picture it not going well for them. I know it's far less than admirable, let alone Christ-like. But some days my heart strangely warms at the possibility of a few billion brimstone-breathing evangelists, sanctimonious conservative politicians, and plank-eyed judgmental Christian neighbors all having to explain themselves in a sanctified flop-swept moment they can't exegete or gaslight themselves out of, and they all get what they have coming to them. But my self-righteous revelry doesn't last long. The mirror calls me out as I remember what I think I know about Jesus, and that rescues me from full-blown, unabated hubris. I begin to wonder what my excuses might be, how I'd spin the enmity I manufacture here, what story I'd come up with for not doing the one task we both know compromises a disciple's job description. And if I really believe what I'm supposed to believe, are any of my justifications sufficient? If Jesus is the perfect expression of that love, and if I'm supposedly trying to follow that Jesus, how could I be so love-impaired so frequently? How do I miss the singular point so consistently? It's not as if I didn't know what I was signing up for, like some lengthy online user agreement I blindly accept in haste, missing the bombshell fine print underneath. Having read the Gospels a few million times, give or take a few 100,000. I know the primary commandment is not something I need to excavate from cumbersome layers of foreign language translations and cultural mores of the time. Jesus himself clearly laid out the most important commandment for me and for everyone who's ever cracked open a Bible, and even most people who've never cracked open a Bible. And so we'd all understand what's being asked of us going in, so there would be no post-altar call buyer's remorse or deathbed claims of a sucker punch, bait and switch. Loving God and neighbor and self is the elemental stuff of Christian prayers, songs, T-shirts, and bumper stickers, and we know that. But as the master Morpheus said to protege Neo in the first and only truly great Matrix film, there is a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. Love is the path that Jesus laid out for us. The book, John Pavlovitz's If God is Love, Don't Be a Jerk, Finding a Faith That Makes Us Better Humans. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. It's no coincidence that the time in Europe when the church ran the continent, from around the 5th century to around the 15th or 16th century, that 1,000-year period is referred to as the Dark Ages. This is what happens when religion controls politics, when religion rules the state, the nation, and every nation of Europe was controlled essentially by the Catholic Church during that period of time. It got busted up with the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century. This was what the founders of this country very much knew about. George Washington refused to declare himself a Christian. Thomas Paine wrote an entire book embracing atheism. Ben Franklin fled Massachusetts as a teenager to escape the religious threats. And Thomas Jefferson went off on it regularly. There's a whole piece Republicans are trying to impose a new dark age on America. It's all laid out, all the quotes and all the links over at hartmannreport.com. Check it out.
Don't obey in advance, don't give them your will. Most of their power comes when you stand still. Defend what you cherish, the courts and the press. Stand with the unions, don't settle for less. Beware the one-party state. Vote while you can before it's too late. Take a stand, take the lead. This is the fight that freedom will need. How to fight tyranny, here's where it starts. With courage and truth and a fire in your heart. Resist their commands, let your voice ring clear. Freedom's a battle, but we hold it dear.
Welcome back, 36 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Karen in Northern Virginia. Hey, Karen, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Where have you been all my life, darling? I just discovered your show, and I want to thank you for highlighting books as I re-educate myself on the founding of the country. So very quickly, I just wanted to say that I am appalled with the SCOTUS's decision to just basically allow Donald Trump's regime to throw people away without due process. It is appalling. And I think that it's being done to just kind of make sure that they quell the dissent. I think with the No Kings March, they're starting to see people rising up and becoming more and more aware of what we are losing here. And I feel like it's a way to smack everybody down and to keep you in place. And with what we saw with the older gentleman who was beat down, the father of the, three Marines, sons, three Marines, sons. Yeah. It was appalling to see that use of force, the brutality, the masks that they wear. And then guess what? We have no way to hold them accountable because they can, poof, make you disappear.
Mm-hmm. And they themselves are hidden. Yeah.
They themselves are hidden. So I feel like also one of the things that I've been putting out when I speak to people who are in immigrant, Facebook groups and on Blue Sky and other places, I really question their the need to go to the immigration hearings, and the reason I say that is because it's become like a honey pot, just so they can easily grab people and make them disappear. Guess what? If you grab a United States citizen, which they have done, you can be made to disappear. And how are you going to get your recourse? And how are you going to get back? And who's going to hold them accountable? It is so dismaying to see the Supreme Court be so brazen in their corruption. It's just terrible.
Yeah,
Thanks for listening.
Sure. Well, very well said, Karen. It's like the old saying, shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, they're or a hunting ground, basically. They've turned the immigration offices into a hunting ground. And this is so wrong because we have given legal status to several million people who have come here as refugees, and they're in the process of having their refugee status adjudicated. Some of them will be told to leave the country, and they will. Others will be told, hey, you're a legitimate refugee, and here's your path to citizenship. You know, it's going to take you a few years, but start now. And what these guys are doing is they're pulling the rug out from under all of these people and just saying, no, we're not even recognizing your refugee status any longer, which, by the way, is a violation of both United States law and international law. And then we're going to stick you on a plane and ship you off to South Sudan or something. I mean, it's just, and we're going to have masked men who you can't identify do it. And if you get out of line, they're going to beat the crap out of you. It's all just wrong. This is police state stuff. Wrong. It really is. It is.
And I will tell you quickly, too, the one who's broken my heart is the Venezuelan hairdresser, the makeup artist.
Yeah, the gay
guy. They
guy.
made to disappear. And I just found out, I read an article back in May, they basically dismissed his asylum case. In other words, in effect, erasing his claim for asylum. And he won't ever be back. And that keeps me up at night. And then I see these MAGA people saying, I voted for this. And I'm like, you don't know until it comes for you. And I think that they're just not paying attention because they think it won't touch them, but it will. It will.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Karen, thank you. So well said. Thank you. Mike in Gainesville, Virginia. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Yeah, Tom, I'd like to point out something that either the news media missed or doesn't understand about the DIA report on the U.S.
The Defense Intelligence Agency report,
Yes, Defense Intelligence Agency report. Okay, first of all, DIA is responsible to do all bomb damage assessment. Also within DIA is the Underground Facilities Analysis Center, which is the only place where underground analysis is done in the IC. So they absolutely are the experts at this. And I wouldn't be worried about low confidence level. All low confidence tells you is we have limited sourcing on this. It doesn't give you anything that is credible or not. So from all I've seen is basic commercial imagery. It shows no indication of basically a collapse of the main chamber. But it's possible we could have got a bomb in there. But this should be declassified or whatever. You know, it is ridiculous because Rand knows that they've been hit, and so it's basically you're basically hiding something like Nixon hiding the bombing of Cambodia. The communists knew they were being bombed. Only the American people knew that we weren't bombing. So one other point on this is that basically in 1998, when Bill Clinton bombed an Iraqi missile factory, we destroyed the building, but the Iraqis pulled out all the machine tools. They had them on trucks.
Right.
But the way they pulled them out, they basically damaged them beyond repair. So they did a job on themselves. Right. So it's possible the Iranians could have pulled out the centrifuges, but it depends on how they pulled them out, whether they survived or not.
That's interesting. Also, the other thing I remember about that event was when Clinton bombed that factory, the Republicans, stepped up to the microphone and said, he's doing it to distract us from Monica.
Right,
oh, God. I'm surprised Democrats aren't out there saying, Trump is doing all this to distract us from his problems. The Epstein files are still hidden, right? Pam Bondi has testified before Congress, and to the best of my knowledge, nobody's even asked her about the Epstein files. It's like how quickly the Democrats just let stuff slide,
Right. And one other point. Trump's ceasefire is going to greatly aid the Iranians in reconstituting their program.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. There is an argument.
Well, it will because of Israel, because if they move this stuff, people are going to have to go in again if they really want to stop the program.
Yeah, no, I get it. And there's more to the program than just these locations. Mike, thanks for the call. Dia in Los Angeles. Hey, Dia, what's up?
Hi, how are you? Thank you for taking my call. There's so many things, and you're talking about some of them. I'd like to know how more people can get the information you've put out, like, for example, about Reagan and the changes. I think that, in my opinion, it's a fight with a huge number of uninformed Americans. Why are we hearing now about people who are going, oh my goodness, I can't get disability? I'm not. It's been known for many years that the Republicans essentially support the uber rich and that they've been against Social Security and stuff forever. Why is it so many Americans are acting like they don't know this and they're voting for? I do understand the race issue and the brainwashing of the Americans for so many years. I mean, if you want to go all the way back from the time of slavery, they clinged on to white supremacy, and all that. And in other words, we'll mess up our own selves. There was a man, he was a playwright. I met him in California. What a great guy. But I remember white people were the only ones that vote against themselves. He was talking about that, they would rather vote for the Republican who doesn't want to support health care or education or anything because they want to cling to being white supremacist.
It's the animating principle of the entire GOP. Yeah, spot on. Dia, thank you. Very well said. Justin in Maui, Hawaii. Hey, Justin, what's up?
Hey, aloha, Tom. I got a question for you, but I got to set it up. So Maui Indivisible on No Kings was tremendous success. We had 5,000 people show up, the most ever. It was really hard to count them.
That's great.
But it's moving the protest to action. And we met with a local mayor and talked to him about a local problem where we have the Hawaii hired all these teachers from the Philippines to come over, J1 teachers, and 10 of them were in one house, and ICE came and ripped them all out of the house at 6:30 in the morning at gunpoint. They weren't even allowed to put on their clothes. One was just in a towel. Terrifying experience. And there was one teacher that wasn't J1 from the Philippines that talked to the police officer nicely and took 45 minutes to show them their papers, and then they said they were looking for some Mexican man and left. So we asked, can you have there's a problem here with masked. We don't know if ICE is ICE or if it's some random felon.
It's the local Proud Boys, yeah.
Right. So we asked, can you put up, that you can't have you can't have a gun and wear a mask, and can you come out with a statement and condemning it? And then we got calls from the police chief, who extended the olive branch for the No Kings protest just to make sure, everything was smoothly, which is great. And then we asked him, what can you do to make sure that we don't have felons going through and, raping or stealing or doing whatever? And he said, well, one thing people can do is they can call our office and then we can confirm if it was ICE or not. But what we wanted to do is to take up what I'm asking you, and I'm asking your listeners, is what's the most progressive thing that local police are doing right now? And what is possible? Because to me, if I was a police chief and it was possible, I would assign, they get intel from Homeland Security when they're coming in, and I would assign a police officer to go with them to at least data collect, make sure they're showing warrants, make sure they're,
in most cases, they don't have warrants. They do these administrative warrants, which are not legal.
Right. So my request is, what can we ask for? What can we ask local police chiefs to do? And I don't know if you have.
I don't think it's just asking local police chiefs. California is talking about passing a law that says that law enforcement cannot mask themselves. I would be trying to do something like that in your city or in your state, Justin. That's where I would go with it. But your local police chief is going to have a lot of discretion, so we'll see. Justin, keep us up to date on how it goes. Thanks for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Exposing the con in conservative. I'll be right back with your phone. And welcome back. Justin in Hollister, North Carolina, or June, excuse me. Hey, June, what's on your mind today?
How you doing?
Good.
Over the years, you have offered a gift for anyone that could name any bill that supported from the Republicans, the working class or the poor. I was thinking when you talked to this gentleman that was worried about communism, asked him the same question.
Mm-hmm.
What have the Republicans done to help us? Also, the commons, you've explained that before in the past. Are there resources or books that we can tap into for that?
You know, there actually have been several good books written about the commons. If you go to one of the book sites, Amazon's the most easily accessible, but I like powells.com, which is my bookstore here in Portland. And just plug in the word commons. And, I suspect you'll see, in fact, I can do that myself right now. And, the war against the commons, dispossession and the resistance and the making of capitalism, that is an interesting book. Reclaiming the Commons by Vandana Shiva. There's a bunch of them. So,
Yeah, she was very good.
Yeah,
I enjoy her work.
Yeah,
Vandana Shiva.
Yeah, those look like they're the two biggest books in that category. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Good luck, June. Joe in Seattle. Hey, Joe, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Tom. Hey, I got a question after I read this. Congressman Al Green of Texas wants to impeach
he just
Donald
introduced
Trump.
his second impeachment resolution.
Oh, it's the second one.
Yeah.
Well, is it possible to impeach Trump and J.D. Vance at the same time?
Arguably. I don't know that there's any law that would prevent a bill of impeachment, including two people. I might be wrong. You'd have to ask an attorney, but I don't think there'd be a problem with that. The problem, the problem, of course, is then Mike Johnson becomes president. First of all, it might even be worse.
Right.
And secondly, you're doubling the difficulty in getting both the impeachment resolution, a positive vote on that in the House, and getting anybody in the Senate to go along. I mean, I don't think that you can say that J.D. Vance has broken any laws yet. Trump is doing it left and right. He's enriching himself. He's taking bribes. He's basically selling access to the U.S. government. He's violated the Hatch Act multiple times. Most recently, when he was pitching Teslas in the front of the White House. I mean, that's a crime for which you go to jail for 2 years. And nobody's and Pam Bondi is like, oh well, we're not going to prosecute him. He's above the law. Yeah.
Right. Okay. That was my question. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Joe. Yeah. This is their resolutions. Al Green did one of the very first ones, and then he did another one after around the bombing without authorization of Congress. There is another member of Congress who has put forward an impeachment resolution, and I don't recall the details of that one. That was, a month or two ago. But none of them are going to go anywhere. They're not even going to get out of committee because the Republicans control the House of Representatives. We'll be right back with more of your calls. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us.
There's
There's a game being played in the Capitol halls, where billionaires tower and the common folk crawl. They cut through the safety nets we all depend to hand out tax breaks to their billionaire friends. They call it freedom, but the cost's obscene. Trading food for fortunes and hope for a dream. The people's voice grows quiet, the power shifts. Oligarchy rises on the back of their gifts. This is how oligarchy works, robbing the people while the wealthy smirk. It's the art of the deal, but the price is steep. Sell it on democracy while the billionaires reap.
All right, 52 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Chris in Stuyvesant, New York. Hey, Chris, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Long time, born and raised in New York City. Could not afford to live there because of the, as a result of what we're seeing with the mayoral race, it's unaffordable. I live upstate now, but I just wanted to throw a few insights to what from my past living in the city and what I'm seeing going on. And I wish I could have voted in this primary. And to Billy, by the way, who we're wondering where his talking points are coming about with immediately jumping to communism. I think it's just part of a script because I don't know if you saw Elise Stefanik's tweets recently about Zorhan. She's crediting Kathy Hochul, which, by the way, comes out of Cuomo's camp. I don't trust her either. But she credited, and she's going to run for governor against Kathy Hochul. She not only called Zorhan a communist, but the next word out of her mouth was prepared for by the AIPAC script was he's an anti-Semite.
Right.
And I encourage anyone to go on the C-SPAN and watch it was a fascinating debate, and just watch. And I hate the word Islamophobia. I don't think it's strong enough. But the amount is Islamophobia that was thrown at him by multiple people on that stage that day. Yeah. And so, why did Billy jump to comment? I don't even think I agree with Billy. Like, it's a knee-jerk thing. But I think it's just part of a script that's going out right now that is provided by AIPAC to people like Richie. Thank you for mentioning Richie Torres. I mean, there's another one who's in the back of these people. My concern, and so if I can make 2 quick points.
This is because Mandami said that Netanyahu is a war criminal and what they're doing in Gaza is wrong.
How dare he? Yeah. How dare he have an opinion like that in America, where we're not allowed to have these things anymore? I guess. Yeah. I would like to just point 2 things out here. Did anyone notice that James Clyburn? We were talking about Clinton and all these other people. Did you read James Clyburn's endorsement of Andrew Cuomo?
Yeah, he
I mean, it wasn't even had. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, finish your thought.
Well, it had nothing to do. I mean, it hardly had anything to do with the mayoral trip. And I'm with Angela in New York. I'm with her on a level of, if you're from New York, keep your nose out of it, keep your snout out of it, James Clyburn. But he put it as it was almost like Andrew Cuomo could be a blessing to the nation in the vein of God to save this country. I think that was in his book.
Clyburn was responsible for Joe Biden becoming president. And I don't think anybody would dispute that. He thinks of himself as a kingmaker, and so now he's deciding to weigh in on other races. I think that's rather bizarre, but for a congressman from one of the Carolinas. But as I recall,
he has power, so I think that's why he does it.
Yeah.
He perceives his own power. I hope this weakens his power. The last thing I'd like to point out, though, let's remember what happened in the second largest city in the state of New York. That would be Buffalo. We had another progressive, let's use the terms that are being used, democratic socialist. Let's be proud of that term. In 2021, taking out the mayor at the time, that was Brian Brown. And her name was India Walton. And she won. And we all had the same kind of elation we have right now. But then a write-in program was done, and same as kind of like where Cuomo was talking about doing an independent campaign. And the fellow who wrote, and they, by the way, they defeated. So there's always been Buffalo, always Democrats. They finally defeated this guy. You had a progressive in there, and then as an independent write-in candidate, wow, look, they bring back the corrupt guy that they were trying to get rid of. The fellow who ran his campaign, Christopher Scallon, is the actual mayor now, because what happened to Byron once they defeated the progressive, trying to help the people? He's now going to run the OTB, the off-track betting campaign. Geez. So you just see where these moderate corporate Democrats,
corruption by name,
everything they can do to keep the people down, but then to get their own. So I just hope everybody in the same way. Go back to Angela. That is shocking. What happened in that polling place? And I can hear her frustration.
Well, I'm guessing that her daughters were registered as independents rather than Democrats, because New York has closed primaries.
Absolutely. You know what? That would.
I should have asked at the time. It didn't occur to me because I grew up in an open primary state. So, but that's probably what it was. Chris, thanks a lot for the call. Yeah, good talking to you. Yeah, it's the top of the hour here. We'll be back on the other side. Jojo from Jurors, the internet sensation, will be with us. Stick around. This could get interesting.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Student Etiquette puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is by John Pavlovitz. It's titled, If God is Love, Don't Be a Jerk, Finding a Faith That Makes Us Better Humans. This is from the introduction titled, You Had One Job. If you want a good laugh, Google the phrase, you had one job. The results are a hilariously tragic parade of seemingly impossible fails, unfathomably poor planning, and face-palming inducing human error. A piece of melted cheese on top of a fast food burger bun. The word stop misspelled on a street crossing. A keep to the right sign with its arrow facing left. A toilet lid inexplicably installed below the seat itself. It's strange stuff. Seeing these stupefying train wrecks and task execution tends to elicit two responses. Usually making you feel a little bit better about yourself while simultaneously wanting to track down the culprits in an effort to understand how they managed to neglect the primary duty assigned to them. We begin to speculate. Were they temporarily distracted? Did they not properly comprehend the instructions? Did they feel as though someone above them in the chain of command dropped the ball? Were they just plain lazy? When people miss the point so spectacularly, we want to know how and why. Because that kind of failure feels impossible from the outside. It seems unfathomable to get the main thing wrong, and seeing it happen sparks our curiosity. I imagine Jesus knows the curiosity that comes with watching people give clear direction, lose their way. As a longtime Christian by aspiration, if not always in practice, I often envision an exasperated Jesus coming back and the first words out of his mouth to his followers as his feet hit the pavement being, "You had one job. Love. So what happened?" I wonder what massive wave of excuses and rationalizations would come flooding from the mouths of the faithful multitude in front of him, how they might justify their mistreatment of the assailed humanity in their care, the verbal and theological gymnastics they'd attempt to avoid culpability for their own cruelty. Would they stridently recite hymn from Leviticus? Would they blame the liberal media for morally corrupting America? Would they talk about people's wicked lifestyle choices? Would they argue that they were loving the sinners in their midst, but simply hating their sin? Would they frantically offer up the same platitudes and parrot back the same partisan talking points that they've gotten used to brandishing on social media media and proffering in Sunday school classes? And if all else failed to convince him, would they quote Jesus to himself in a desperate Hail Mary effort to pass the buck to him, did or failed to do while supposedly standing up for him? And there, fully seen in the piercing gaze of the namesake of their very faith tradition, with all their justifications and excuses exhausted and only their fully exposed hearts left, would any of their responses be sufficient reasons for refusing to love? When that was the singular task and primary commandment that he left them responsible for tending to? In my less compassionate moments, I admit that I like to picture it not going well for them. I know it's far less than admirable, let alone Christ-like. But some days my heart strangely warms at the possibility of a few billion brimstone-breathing evangelists, sanctimonious conservative politicians, and plank-eyed judgmental Christian neighbors all having to explain themselves in a sanctified flop-swept moment they can't exegete or gaslight themselves out of, and they all get what they have coming to them. But my self-righteous revelry doesn't last long. The mirror calls me out as I remember what I think I know about Jesus, and that rescues me from full-blown, unabated hubris. I begin to wonder what my excuses might be, how I'd spin the enmity I manufacture here, what story I'd come up with for not doing the one task we both know compromises a disciple's job description. And if I really believe what I'm supposed to believe, are any of my justifications sufficient? If God is love, and if Jesus is the perfect expression of that love, and if I'm supposedly trying to follow that Jesus, how could I be so love impaired so frequently? How do I miss the singular point so consistently? It's not as if I didn't know what I was signing up for, like some lengthy online user agreement I blindly accept in haste, missing the bombshell fine print underneath. Having read the Gospels a few million times, give or take a few 100,000, I know the primary commandment is not something I need to excavate from cumbersome layers of foreign language translations and cultural mores of the time. Jesus himself clearly laid out the most important commandment for me and for everyone who's ever cracked open a Bible, and even most people who've never cracked open a Bible. And so we'd all understand what's being asked of us going in, so there would be no post-altar call buyer's remorse or deathbed claims of a sucker punch, bait and switch. Loving God and neighbor and self is the elemental stuff of Christian prayers, songs, T-shirts, and bumper stickers, and we know that. But as the master Morpheus said to protege Neo in the first and only truly great Matrix film, there is a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. Love is the path that Jesus laid out for us. The book, John Pavlovich's God is Love, Don't Be a Jerk, Finding a Faith That Makes Us Better Humans.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, welcome to the third hour of our program. One of my favorite social media stars is Jojo from Jurors. I've been following Jojo, J-E-R-Z, as in Jersey. I've been following Jojo for, it seems like years. First on Twitter and now on Blue Sky. Jojo, J-O-J-O-F-R-O-M, like from Jurors, J-E-R-Z, over on Blue Sky, and I believe it's the same on Twitter. And hey, she's with us today. Jo Carducci, also known as Jojo from Jurors. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Tom. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's great having you. I want to talk about social media with you in just a second, but first, your most recent post, I think, was Donnie 2 weeks ago. Boom, boom. Do I have that right? Yeah. What's your take on where we're at right now politically?
Politically, in terms of Iran, or in terms of the whole big picture?
All of the above, whatever you'd like.
Well, I'm gravely concerned obviously, I think that we are seeing in just a few months' time a sustained and relentless attack on democracy itself in lots of different areas, all different prongs, on, the universities, the courts, private industry, legacy media, obviously, I believe, overreach in terms of utilizing military power. We have active duty Marines on our streets. The National Guard is being used, again, also on our streets against our own citizens. So, I mean, that's just the hit list of some of the things that I have on my worry list at the moment.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more.
No doubt about it. I mean, it really is quite remarkable how weird things have gotten just in the last decade in particular. I wanted to talk about you and about social media. You have really emerged as one of the super high profile, super popular, really well-known people for your posts on social media. Just reading your stuff, I mean, you're super creative. You've got a great intellect and a quick wit. But how did you get started in this, and why and how, and what do you? Well, let's start there.
Okay, and thank you for the compliments. That's very nice of you. It means a lot to me. I didn't set out to do any of this. I have a lot to say, and my original activation, so to speak, happened in the immediate wake of the 2016 election, when I take my kids to vote with me. I put them to bed. They were 7 and 4 at the time. And I put them to bed with promises of waking up to the first female president-elect in our country's history. And I told them that all of that was under the guise of the good guy winning and right prevailing, like they do in the movies. Not always, but usually, ultimately in the end. And when my son, who was 7 again at the time, woke up and found me in a puddle basically on my bathroom floor, having been up like a lot of people, crying all night and into the morning, he looked at me and he had one question, and that question was, how did this happen? You said the good guy would win, and the good guy didn't win. And I had told them that a lot of what Donald Trump embodied was the worst of who we were as people and not the best of us. And when my son asked me that simple yet profound answer for him, I didn't have that mom moment where I could use it as a teaching lesson. I had nothing. And so I decided in that moment that I was going to do whatever I could to right that wrong. And I didn't know what that looked like at the time. But what ended up happening was I went to Twitter to find like-minded people. And over the years, I found them and I found myself in the process, and I found my voice. And now if I can impact even one person or change one outcome or the trajectory of one awful fate, then I'm going to do everything I can to do that. But I just have to speak my truth. And what people tell me is that the way I say things resonates with them because it's the way they think. And maybe that's because I'm just a mom in New Jersey, not just. And I tell my truth. I speak my truth from my heart. And my kids are my why. They will always be my why. I love the promise of this country, and I'm going to work to make sure that we right the ship that I think is going in the very wrong direction at the moment.
And you're doing such a great job. And for people who are listening, Jojo from Jurors also has a Substack newsletter now. The URL is real easy to remember. It's jojofromjurors.substack.com. So you started posting on Twitter. Was there a formula or a method? The question behind my question is, how does one become a media or a social media superstar like you have?
Well, I think honestly, for me, the key was just sticking to who I am, being authentic, being genuine, and reacting in real time the way that things make me feel, and trying my best to convey my feelings, my genuine response in my heart and mind and soul in real time. And there's no formula per se. I mean, we could talk all day long about how you can, utilize the platforms you have to amplify yourself and others. But in terms of the number one most important thing I would say that I would tell anybody is just be yourself. all the time. And if you have something, say it. Say it how you would say it to your friends. Say it how you would say it to your kids or your neighbors or whomever, but just be yourself. And there's a lot of power in that. So I don't have a strategy other than just being truthful, and I just happen to have a lot to say.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's like my dad used to say, don't tell lies, they're too hard to remember.
Yeah.
It's just be yourself.
Right.
One of the things I've learned from having my Substack now for just about 4 years, I think, is that, in fact, I've got 4 different Substack newsletters, and 3 of them publish, or 2 of them publish daily, and 2 of them publish weekly. And that publishing daily is really a large key to success. Obviously, you have to have reasonable content, but frequency is a huge factor with success for a Substack newsletter. I'm wondering if you have found that that's also the case with social media.
Oh, definitely. Frequency, but also being there as much as humanly possible as things are unfolding, because whether it's good or bad, and for, we could argue both for a lot of reasons, people get their information from people like me now. They don't get their information from legacy media as much as they get it from social media and what we call new media, content creators, et cetera. And so I do find that trying to not necessarily be the breaking news first, I don't pretend to be a journalist or an expert, but at least paying attention, being dialed in enough so that if somebody else is, perusing social media and they happen to go to me for information as it breaks, they see that I've either highlighted something, commented on something, called something out. And so I try to do that as much as humanly possible. Of course, it's impossible to be dialed into all of it all the time. But I definitely think that, that frequency is key. I just want to add to that, Tom, something that I don't want to overlook, and something that I think you do very well, but also in your style and in your Substacks, is when you make people out there, particularly right now, feel as if they're seen in this moment and not crazy or insane or gaslit or, that they want to sort of just disappear and disengage. When you make them feel validated for walking around this world going, what the crap is going on right now, then they really trust you, because then you validated their experience. And we're so often inundated with information and propaganda that is trying to make you feel other than your reality. And so when you can help somebody feel seen in these crazy times, they feel like they have a port in the storm. And I think that can't be overstated in terms of importance.
Yeah, I get it. How frequently every day do you post on social media? And how has social media changed in the last couple of years, particularly since Elon Musk has turned X into essentially a sewer? I just stopped posting over there altogether a few months ago. It just was too insane, but and largely limit my activities now to Blue Sky and Substack and Spoutable and Mastodon. But how about you?
Well, I stayed on Twitter after Elon because I have this thing about maybe it's the Jersey in me, maybe it's the mom, maybe it's the 5th child, I don't know, maybe it's that I'm Lebanese, about staying in the fight, and I'm too stubborn to walk away.
Well, you have a huge audience there too.
Well, that too, but I actually, there was this huge purge. There's an exodus, as you know, I'm sure, of people going to Threads originally and then Blue Sky, where at the time I had 1 million plus followers, and that dropped within, I would say, 3 days. There was a precipitous exit of about 200,000, 300,000 people who followed me at the time. They've since come back, which I also think is very interesting. It is very, very challenging in many ways to remain on that platform because it has become such a cesspool, and I have to sift through 500 comments about my face or my clothes or a lie about a mugshot or you name it, always personal attacks. I had to sift through all of that to get to the responses from people who want to actually engage in a dialogue that is respectful. But so Twitter has become it feels a little bit like you go in there like you're really bracing for a fight. So I put my war paint on and I get in there. So it's definitely changed a lot since Elon's takeover. But I will say, in terms of across the board, the difference in the last few years is just the sheer impact and influence that the new media, the individuals like me, you have Aaron Parnas out there, you have obviously Midas Touch, Ron Filipowski, Aaron Rupar. You have a lot of accounts that people really do turn to when they don't go to CNN or MSNBC or other forms of traditional media. Again, double-edged sword. But I would say that because there are a lot of bad actors out there who don't vet their information the way that they should, and I try with everything I can to be someone who does. But I mean, that alone, that shift, that movement from trusting the likes of Jake Tapper to trusting somebody like me instead has been rapid and dramatic. So I think that in a few short years, I mean, there's data to back all of this up. The right wing has been using that to their great advantage for some time. The Democrats have a lot of ground to make up, but just that massive shift in terms of influence across the platforms, I think that has been a really big difference in a very short period of time.
Yeah, totally get it. We got to get you a book contract.
I may or may not have one.
Oh, you do? You have a book out?
I can't. Stay tuned. No, stay tuned for
Very cool.
for development on that.
There you go. Joe Carducci, Jojo from Jurors, .substack.com. Check it out. Joe, thanks so much for dropping by.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Great having you. It's 18 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's the place where we dare to ask, is a Walmart a person? And we dare to say, are you kidding me? Those Republicans on the Supreme Court got it wrong again. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Douglas in Alexandria, Virginia. Hey, Douglas, thanks for listening on the Thom Hartmann app. What's on your mind today?
Yes, Tom. I'm a first learner. I've been listening to you for quite some time. I first learned about you when you were doing a simulcast on C-SPAN. You were living in Vermont at the time.
Oh, so wow.
How long ago was that?
That was 22 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you, Douglas.
I just wanted to tell you about an observation that I made Saturday night. I was watching the coverage of the bombing in Iran, and I was watching MSNBC, and they had a camera trained on the north side of the White House, I think from the Hay Adams, and the flag on the top of the White House is nicely illuminated and everything, but that beautiful big new flag on the north lawn was in silhouette. So evidently it didn't appear to be illuminated. And I thought, well, there's just another example of the disrespect that the president has for this country.
Well, let's cut him a little slack out and around to installing the lights.
Probably so, but shouldn't the flag be taken down in that case at night?
Oh yeah, the flag should always be taken down at night. You mean they're not taking it down and putting it back up again?
It was on the pole. It was in silhouette right in front of the White House.
Do they
from the camera shot?
Do they take down the flag over the White House at night? Maybe there's something about flag protocol I don't know.
Well, the one on the top of the White House is illuminated.
Oh, so it's running all the time. I see. Is that a rule? If it's not lit, it should be taken down?
I don't know how strict a rule that is, but it's the protocol, I think, of flying an American flag.
Interesting. Well, I don't know. That's fascinating. Thanks for calling and pointing it out. Lori in Ocala, Florida. Hey, Lori, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom.
Hey.
In April, a U.S. District Judge Brian Murphy in Boston decided that people have to get a second chance or a chance to argue deportation in a third country.
Correct.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Blew that up.
Yeah, well, okay. So 2 days ago, the Supreme Court changed the statute and allowed Trump to start swift deportation to third countries. Now, also we find out that 2 days ago, Stephen Miller owns a large portfolio of stock in Palantir. And Palantir has the largest input in finding out all about the immigration system, who's in it, who is scheduled to go up at what courthouses every day so they can find people, and they're basically doing a lot of the detective work for Miller. Is saying, hey, let's push this. We got to get 3,000 people a day, and it's going to ching, and it's really kind of when you put it all together that Stephen Miller putting himself, because he's able to get more people taken to third world countries by Palantir.
Oh, it's the Trump way. If you can make a buck off government, no matter how corrupt it is, that's your job. You know, grifters united. Lori, thank you. Thanks for pointing that out. That was fascinating. 22 and a half minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in 1 minute. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com. With your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, this vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out.
But the zone with 1,000 fakes say up is down and the good guys are snakes. They bend the law, then call it fate, while blue-suited consultants calibrate. There's a blue donkey teaching with a PowerPoint slide, but nobody hears 'cause the volume's too quiet. They're quoting polls, trimming the sails, while democracy's taking on water and bells. One party selling a big lie, with a flag in flames and a battle cry. The others got facts, but no fight. Can't sell the truth if you whisper at night.
Welcome back, 25 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Jack in Santa Clarita, California. Hey, Jack, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Really appreciate your book readings. Helps me with my summer reading list.
Oh, good.
I wanted to throw in, I don't know the decision of the Supreme Court about the renditions, what the opposition was, how they were arguing, but I think
there were no arguments. That's the problem, Jack. They did not hold. They did not take friends of the court briefs. They didn't listen to arguments. They just looked at the case and said, "Okay, Trump gets his way."
Well, that goes against the Eighth Amendment for cruel and unusual punishment.
I think it goes against the Fourth Amendment and the Fifth Amendment. Your right to due process and the Sixth and Seventh Amendments would guarantee, on a trial by jury.
Well, that pretty much covers everything.
Yeah. No, I think it is just nakedly unconstitutional what these guys are doing. I am astonished that 6 conservatives on the Supreme Court, ruled in favor of the Trump administration. I'm not astonished that they did it on the shadow docket so that they don't have to explain themselves. They don't have to offer any rationalization. They're just like, yes, Mr. Trump, no problem, Mr. Trump. Please don't send the Proud Boys to our house, Mr. Trump. I mean, I think that's what's going on. I think that Trump and the maggots have succeeded in intimidating these Supreme Court justices. I can't come up with any other rational explanation. Jack, thanks for the call. It's 27 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your thoughts, your calls on the other side of this break. It's the Thom Hartmann support group for we the people of the United States and the world.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Fair and only slightly unbalanced. I'll be right back with your calls. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is by Brian J. Karam. It's titled Free the Press, The Death of American Journalism and How to Revive It. This is from the very last chapter, page 265. My father once told me that if you have a complaint, then you'd better have a solution. People bitch about everything, he routinely told me. They seem to like it more than solving problems. I've often thought about that as I spent a career covering the news. It is increasingly popular to merely ignore those things with which we don't agree and treat people the same way. That's hardly a solution. It only creates more problems. My pop also preached to me about adaptability, as did Alan, and that is a lesson I've tried to apply to every part of my life, to adapt. By the time Alan was preaching the same thing, it was a lesson I'd already learned, though it's still much appreciated. Today, the changing media landscape calls for adherence to some of our strictest tenets, while at the same time adapting to how we deliver the news to the public. Our democracy demands it. The local paper is perilously close to completely disappearing. Large swaths of this country live in news deserts. According to a study published by Axios in June 2021, the United States has lost some 37,000 newsroom jobs since 2016. And according to a study released on May 1st, 2021, by the University of North Carolina's School of Media and Journalism, more than 1,300 communities across the United States have lost all news coverage. Among the findings in the study, about 20% of all metro and community newspapers in the United States, about 1,800, have gone out of business or merged since 2004, when about 9,000 were being published. Hundreds more have scaled back coverage so much that they're becoming what researchers call ghost newspapers. Almost all of the newspapers still publishing have also scaled back just less drastically. Online news sites, as well as some TV newsrooms and cable access channels, are working hard to keep local reporting alive, but these are taking root more slowly than newspapers are dying. Hence the 1,300 communities that have lost all local. To adapt to this undeniable fact, we have to make newspapers more viable and easier to sustain. We cannot afford to let newsrooms disappear because they play a vital role in delivering information that the internet cannot reproduce. When you go to the internet, you're usually on a hard target searching for information. When you pick up a newspaper, you're scanning for information and are open to read anything presented to you. You may not know what to search for, but you know what you want to read when you find it. Newspapers are smorgasbords of information. The internet isn't and cannot be set up that way. So how do we save newspapers? There are a variety of business models currently under consideration. Nonprofits hold promise, but as of yet, we haven't gotten the needed solution or the needed traction. A big push was made to save the Baltimore Sun through a nonprofit, and this may indeed be the best way to save newspapers, since the job they do for society is completely incompatible with capitalism. Quote, "There's no question about it. I don't think any problem facing the country is more severe than what is facing our news information infrastructure," and Michael Copps, formerly of the Federal Communications Commission, told me. Quote, "I saw it. First call I got was from the chairman when I joined the FCC was about the merger of Fox and Chris Kraft. That set the tone. I thought going to the FCC was the coolest job on earth. We'd be serving the public. And then I realized I spent a lot of time meeting with CEOs who wanted to seek approval of their mergers. The FCC more often than not approved the mergers. Then a rival would come in and gripe and say in order to compete, they had to have a merger too." End quote. The market obviously isn't the answer. It only allows politics and information today to be played and reported on as sport. Walter Cronkite, Dan Rather, and others saw it coming. This is a very steep mountain to climb, and there is no commercial solution to the problem. The corporate consolidation, as cops told me, is too embedded in the system. How do you get beyond that? The government has to exercise its antitrust laws, and we need to think about public media. Put the brakes on corporate mergers. Subsidies are the key, Victor Picard, the University of Pennsylvania communications professor, explained to me. He works at the intersections of U.S. and global media activities and politics, the history and political economy of media institutions, and the normative foundations of media policy. Quote, it's the commercialization, the dedication to clickbait and profits above all else. That's what's driving this. There's no commercial incentive to do it right. Journalism often isn't sexy, end quote, he said. While there isn't one perfect model, Picard said he could see subsidized subscribers or a voucher plan. Everybody gets a $100 voucher and they can buy media of their choice. It guarantees a certain method of support. Subsidize the news outlets themselves. My preference is to radically expand and reform our public broadcast system so that they can actually be politically independent, end quote. Pickard also supports public media centers in every city across the country, public libraries, schools, and journalism schools. That's my radical plan. It's healthy to have a mixed system, independents, nonprofits, public benefit corporations, and standards for for-profit companies. The driving force today in journalism is capitalism, and it's driving our journalism into the ground. The book is Free the Press, The Death of American Journalism and How to Revive It. Our daily song is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out. So have you noticed that the Republicans are pretty much not talking about a constitutional convention anymore? They used to be gung-ho to rewrite the Constitution. You know, they wanted to put corporate personhood in there. They wanted to change it so that women can't vote. They wanted to do away with the election of senators, repeal the 17th Amendment, take us back to them being appointed by the states. They had all these weird, they wanted to outlaw labor unions, all these weird ideas, but they've stopped talking about it. I mean, they're still moving forward on it, but it's not. Project 2025, for example, you know, their ultimate talking document does not have one single mention in it about a constitutional. Why would that be? Well, it's because the Supreme Court is doing their work for them. I mean, you know, just they have overturned Article 2. They've overturned the 1st, 4th, 9th, and 14th Amendments. They've overturned Article 1, Section 7. All the details of this whole thing are over at HartmannReport.com. You got to check it out.
In 33, a nation's cry, a parliament set ablaze. Leader sees the fear and flame, sees final days. Will history repeat once more? A crisis as the key. Will Trump ignite the fear and doubt to end our liberty? A salute here, a purge begun. Foundations start to shake. The playbook of authoritarian rule. Our freedom's now at stake. Will history repeat once more?
Welcome back, 36 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Paul and Paul, yeah. Paul, I can never pronounce your town, Paul.
It's P-Wallop.
Hey, P-Wallop, thank you. So it says here you want to disagree
Tom,
with me. What's up?
Yeah, I love your program. It's great. Have you actually watched the video of that guy coming at the officer with that weapon?
I'm sorry, which video of which what?
The video of the guy with the weed whacker coming at the cops.
Yeah.
Have you actually watched the video?
Yeah, I have. It doesn't look to me like he's coming after anybody. It looks to me like he's running away.
He swings it right at them.
He turns around. He's got it in his hand.
Yes, and he points it right at the guy's face.
The guy
can't do that.
The guy is feet from him.
Oh, it doesn't look like that in the video, Tom.
Well, maybe not to you. I mean, it did not look to me like he was making, like he had any serious threat against anybody. And beyond that, why are people who are not wearing identification and have their faces masked?
They were wearing identification. You could see it on their
bringing
suits.
people to the ground and beating the crap out of them.
That guy's lucky that that's all that happened to him. He could have gotten shot easily for doing that.
Yeah, Paul, I strongly disagree. And Wayne in Charleston, West Virginia. Hey, Wayne, what's on your mind today?
First, quick question, Tom. The Monuments Clause, that's still law, right?
Emoluments, yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, since we got a mob boss for a president, cabinet, I'm wondering if there's anything to be done to these people for all the stuff they've broken up the laws.
Which people are you talking about? You're talking about
I'm talking about
Donald Trump
mob boss
making off of
and
billions
his
of dollars to become president. As long as he controls the Justice Department and the House of Representatives and the Senate, the only three bodies that really could investigate him and bring charges against him, I think he's going to skate. And the people around him as well.
Do you think he'll skate before we get back in office, or what? If we get back in.
Yeah. I think he's skating right now.
No, well...
I mean, he went to jail for 2 years when he was pitching Teslas in front of the White House.
Well, for his committed crimes, for everything he's already done, he ought to be under the jail when the time comes.
Yeah, well, or in it. Yeah, no, I'm with you. You know, where the Republicans wimped out when they didn't convict him for the clear crime of trying to overthrow our government that he committed on January 6th. That he should have been barred forever. Wayne, thanks for the call. Dean in Tomahawk, Wisconsin. Hey, Dean, thanks for listening to WJJQ. What's up?
Yeah. The guy from Hawaii was asking about what they could do. Now, maybe a week ago, I was reading on Reddit and posted, now this is off the top of my head because I don't have it in front of me. It was 18 U.S. Code Section 214, I believe, and it stated, according to that if more than one masked person comes at you to intimidate you, it's against the law and can be punishable by no more than 10 years in prison. So just kind of wanted to throw it out there. Maybe somebody could investigate that and see if there's anything to it.
Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar with that, and I don't know of any laws against being masked, but there are laws against assault and kidnapping and things like that. And thanks for the call. Phil in Salinas, California. Hey, Phil, what's up?
Well, I think we need to have a blue state pullout. Take the payroll taxes that are going to Washington and keep them at home.
Well, that's 2/3 of the entire economy, is the blue states.
Yeah. Well, look, keep that money at home. Use it for single-payer health care.
Yeah.
Let the red states go ahead and lose Medicare and Medi-Cal because they seem to want Trump. So I'm thinking it'd be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, the problem is that they won't even realize it. I mean, people complaining about, raising the retirement age to 67 don't realize that it was Reagan who did it. I mean, the Republicans are always, on the look for ways to screw average people so that they can shovel more money into the money bins of the top 1%. I mean, it's just the bottom line. Phil, thanks for the call.
You need to have a blue state pullout because, you got to figure that's 74% of the gross national product.
I got it.
Blue state.
I got it. Phil, thanks. Jack in Chicago. Hey, Jack, what's up?
Hey, I too, like the other guy, enjoy your show. I wanted to try to give you a quick use of force lesson, since even though you tried to, I think, say that you had a private security private eyes license at one point in your life, which is absolutely nothing compared to the credentials of a trained law enforcement
officer.
officer.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I know.
Yeah.
I learned that when I went through and graduated from the Georgia Police Academy.
Okay. Yeah, I think that somebody that has a weed whacker spinning at I don't know how many thousands of RPM, would that cause death or great bodily harm if somebody, say, put that thing in your face and started, trying to weed whack your face? Would that cause death or great bodily harm, you think? Maybe permanent blindness?
I did not see anybody being hurt by a weed whacker, but I did see an old man having his face pounded on.
Can you answer the question?
Jack,
can you answer the question?
Oh, of course, yes. Jack, the fact of the matter is that these guys beat this guy to the ground.
Let me finish. I'm not going to.
There is no justification for them beating him in the face.
I'm not going to justify any police officers' unlawful use of force.
Then we're done with the conversation. Jessica in Chicago. Hey, Jessica, what's on your mind?
Oh, please. I hope I have enough time. Sure. Jack, go and watch the tape. He is
They're watching the version that Fox News has edited down and is putting up. And that
he is sprayed in the face less than 2 feet away with mace. He has the weed whacker off. He has it. He is carrying it up and back, and when he is sprayed with mace, it barely touches the shoulder of that man. And for Jack, you want to know what's happening to him now on Lawrence O'Donnell. He is in a cell with 70 people. He has one toilet. He is in a cage. That is what he told his son, a cage with 70 people. That is why no one gets to go in the detainment centers. They are treating them worse than animals. And that, if we're not in Hitler's time, I don't know what we are. And then, sorry, I am just enraged at all these Republicans who don't bother to watch. They're telling us to watch. They should watch the lies.
Jessica, they are the victims of a propaganda operation over at Fox News and other right-wing sites that are using edited videos. They, you can shoot something from 4 different perspectives and have 4 different apparent events happening, and there's of that out there. And
Tom, this was insane. This morning, I watched Trump speak at NATO. I couldn't believe what Trump admitted to in front of all our reporters. He said he took a phone call from Iran the night they were bombing our military base, and they asked Trump if it was okay with him to bomb.
Right.
And Trump said he told them, sure. And if that's not treason, I don't know what is. He will claim he evacuated soldiers, but there could have been soldiers left. And all our military equipment was at that base. And so he agreed to them firing missiles, and there is no excuse for that. And they're so cocky they thought they could shoot all the missiles down. What if they didn't? What if people died? What if our military equipment was destroyed? Trump has no conscience. He doesn't give a damn about anybody. And he had been at NATO in front of all the reporters. And so I called Congressman Green. And if that's not a reason, treason. He's treasonous.
Yeah. Okay. I get it, Jessica. I get it.
Sorry.
I didn't see that conversation, so I can't speak specifically to it. But I think that there was an awful lot of performance going on by both Iran and the United States in this regard. A lot of fake. 46 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
I'll be right back with more of your calls in just a minute. Stay with us. And welcome back, Dave in Olympia, Washington. Hey, Dave, thanks for watching us on Free Speech. What's up?
No, hi, Tom. Hey, I was just calling regarding your flag discussion earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The flags at the White House. And when people start talking about that, they get mixed up. There are flag etiquette. There's codes.
Correct.
And they're listed. they're not enforced, and they use soft words like should and custom.
Right. But you would expect the flag code to be respected by the White House. So what is it with regard to flying the flag after dark?
Well, what doesn't surprise you, though?
Yeah.
My company installs flags for our city, and so it's been kind of a curiosity for me to look up the laws and codes and stuff like that. And it's funny, people get bent out of shape about a flag on the ground, but you can go on Google and you can order, like a flag bikinis, flag underwear,
I know.
flag floor mat to wipe your feet
Our Secretary
on.
of Defense wears a flag handkerchief in his pocket.
So he blows his nose on the flag.
Yeah, exactly.
And compare that, and then when you look at it was Texas versus Johnson, 1989, Supreme Court.
That was the flag burning.
Allowed today.
It's
the First Amendment right to burn it. So I don't know how much worse you can get than burning a flag.
No, I get all that, and I get that it's a code, not a law. I'm just wondering what the code says about flying the flag at night. Does it have to be illuminated, or
it has to be? It's supposed to be illuminated.
Okay. So
otherwise, it's supposed to be taken down every night.
Right. So that's what I thought. And I live in a neighborhood where and there's a flagpole, and there's a guy who actually one of our neighbors who puts the flag up every morning, takes it down every night. So I assume.
Yeah, I think it's exactly. That's all good. I'm not a flag burner myself, but people have a right to do what they want with it.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Probably, Trump said that he paid for the flagpoles to be put up. Maybe he just was doing it on the cheap and didn't pay for the lights. Or maybe it's going to take them a little more time to run the electric, out there and all that kind of stuff. I'm willing to give that a week or two before I get all freaked out about it.
Anybody that had any sense of being able to plan and do those simultaneously.
Yeah, you would think so. You would think so. Dave, thanks a lot for the call.
What can you?
Appreciate it.
You bet. Take care. Bye.
Mark in San Francisco. Hey, Mark, what's up?
Hey, Tom, when we do protests against Trump, we got to do protests against the GOP. He's got to help.
I agree. It's not just
We
Trump.
have to take down that party, Tom.
Well, define takedown. We've got to beat them at the polls. Absolutely.
Right. That's what I mean. I mean, we've got to defeat them. The right way. But, we've got to make people aware. They've caused a lot of damage to us over the years, and we've got to protest them.
Yeah. Yeah. So where do you start with that in your mind?
Well, when we have these protests about Trump, also, protest the GOP. He's got help. Mm-hmm. He's not doing this alone. He's got a whole party behind him. Yeah. And they basically turned their back on America. And
not just a whole party. He's also got a whole bunch of right-wing billionaires who are doing their best to turn average Americans into suckers. Yes, support Trump so that we can have more tax cuts. And he'll keep the black people and the brown people out of the country, don't you?
It's a shame that they've turned us against each other, and they've succeeded, but we've got to turn it on them. They've caused so much damage to this, people aware of it.
Yeah, there was a thread over on Democratic Underground about that just a little bit ago today. Spot on. Mark, thank you. Thanks for the call. And thanks for watching us on Facebook Live. We'll be right back. It's about 10 minutes before the end. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. It's the Great Revenge. Trump's Orwellian America is taking shape. The key to it was this insane executive order titled Ending the Weaponization of the Federal Government. And basically what it does is it sets up the weaponization of the federal government. It proclaims that the Biden administration was, using the Justice Department to go after Trump people and Republicans, and it does it in a way that basically rationalizes they're doing the same thing. This is a absolute danger to our republic. This executive order and Trump's assertions around it, and you can read all about it. There's a whole op-ed about it, titled The Great Revenge, Trump's Orwellian America Takes Shape, over at HartmannReport.com. Get ready for the investigations, the arrests, and the show trials. Hartmann ripped it out. Welcome back. 52 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Nina in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hey, Nina, what's up?
Hi, love your music, you and Louise. Love it.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, it's amazing music. I wanted to ask you what's the difference between what a New Deal is and what a raw deal is.
Well, the New Deal is what Franklin Roosevelt came up with Social Security and the right to unionize and all kinds of, minimum wage and unemployment insurance and all that kind of stuff. The raw deal is the Republican Party ever since 1981 doing absolutely everything they can to reverse the New Deal.
Oh, good. Where's FDR when we need him? Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Nina. It's great to hear from you. Chief in Macon, Georgia. Hey, Chief, what's on your mind today? Thanks for listening to Sirius XM.
Hello?
Hey, you're on the air.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
So I wanted to address the issue with ICE just showing up to random places. I'm sure it's not random for them. I mean, they have a plan. But just basically grabbing people, they have masks. They don't show any type of credentials. They're carrying rifles. Who knows who these people are?
Exactly.
So what I'm getting at is, in this state alone, I can't identify with all states, but this state, you have to identify yourself as a law enforcement officer.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to be able to see your face, but in order to enact an arrest, they have to show you their face. Also, they have to show a badge and identify with what agency they're with. Otherwise, it's kidnapping, because in this state, if you move somebody more than 15 feet, it's kidnapping.
Are you an attorney,
if you hold
Chief?
somebody against their will.
Or a police officer?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm a police officer.
Okay, cool.
And in addition, oh God, I lost train of thought. I'm sorry.
Sorry to have interrupted
in addition, if you're fine. If you hold somebody against their will, and it's a set amount of time, if you hinder them from leaving without proper arrest, that's false imprisonment.
Right.
So everything they're doing is completely against the law.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why people don't see that. I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, I think increasingly people are seeing that. And then, taking somebody to the ground and beating them in the head and the face, it's just, way beyond that. That's not anything that any law enforcement officer that I've ever known would do. And I've known quite a few of them.
Dude, I don't know one. You know what? If you did that where I work at, you would be in federal court. You would go to prison.
Yeah.
Prison.
Yeah. No, I get it.
You're not allowed to do that. Like, it's, my God, like, and I don't understand where people think we're going with all this. Like, it's not going to get better. As long as it's allowed, it's going to get worse, because bad behavior, if you applaud bad behavior, it just gets worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we're doing, or that's what the right wingers are doing, is they're trying to applaud this bad behavior. Chief, thank you. Very well said. Mel and many listening to KTNF. What's up?
Hey, I wanted to give you some figures on the 24 election.
Mm-hmm.
There were 250 million eligible voters. Excuse me. Only got 29%. Harris got 28%. Problem? 94 million people did not vote.
Right, who were eligible to vote, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I get it, Mel. I get it. Well said. Thank you for sharing that with us. Lou in San Antonio. Hey, Lou. Got a little less than a minute here. You got a quick one?
Yes, Tom, quickly. ICE with their military hardware, if they want to keep the community safe, they have the intel, go into these gang-infested neighborhoods. They know who the undocumented gang members are, and pull them out from wherever they're hiding.
A little too much danger for these guys. They don't want the danger. They'd rather chase down people in the fields.
Well, it's too easy for them.
Yeah.
They should do the hard work, Well,
that's what we were told was going to happen, that they were going to go after the criminals, but it doesn't seem to be happening. Lou, thank you for the call. And thanks for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us, and that includes you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the folks around you. Stay safe, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
Here's a thought-provoking bumper sticker.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out, Thom and HartmannReport.com.